Going live. We're doing it live. Here we go. Hi, everyone. I am here with Brent and Alex and Bobby. We're talking about the coronavirus. I'm going to give some updates. We're having a lot of technical difficulties, audio issues on my end. So if you guys notice any problems in the live stream, please tell us and I'll try to correct it. But how about you start us off, Brent? Give us your new synopsis on what's going on with this coronavirus madness. Do you think the media is giving us an accurate picture or overhyping it? What do you think?
First of all, thanks for having me on, Rowan. And Max is also here. His video isn't on here, but he's on via audio. So it's the five of us. And before I share anything about coronavirus, just want to share that I have a corporate communications degree from University of Kentucky. I graduated in 2007. And I took a few mass media courses too and got pretty interested in it and learned quite a bit about how, the media actually works. And my wife has a journalism degree from San Diego State, so we talk about this stuff relatively often, and experience is the most important thing. So when you have theories about the way reality works, and then you can kind of actually observe reality and play it back and keep an open mind about, is your theory correct or not, you can kind of figure things out. So that's kind of my approach with how this stuff works. And I'm sure during this live stream we'll get into lots of data and unfolding events with coronavirus. But essentially, I still have my basic thesis that we talked about whenever it was a couple weeks ago about coronavirus, that it's generally just being blown completely out of proportion by the mainstream media in particular, but also social media. We're living in a very unique time right now that we've never lived in, where we're more interconnected globally through social media, mainstream media, CCTV cameras, just all forms of new type of technology that I think has really, changed, where it's unprecedented. And of course you have coronavirus, which is a new thing, and people freak out with new things that are scary in general until they have more information. So like, for example, the flu, just in the US alone, this last season, it infected somewhere from like 43,000 to 52,000, 43 to 52 million Americans out of approximately 330 million Americans. We'll get the new census in 2020 to see how many official American citizens we have, minus, of course, many illegals that we'll probably never be able to know for sure in the U.S. And out of those, up to 49 million flu illnesses, about 20 to 52,000 flu deaths we had. So, for example, the latest numbers I've seen on coronavirus globally right now is 5,400 people have died from coronavirus. And that's approximately the same time period, because the coronavirus, from the best experts I've seen, it was supposedly started mid-November. So we essentially have similar...
I heard, tell me if I'm wrong, I heard that over 1,000 people died in Italy. Is that right? Like, what the heck's going on? That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, Rowan's right, but let me put some things into perspective here. So when we go back to 2009, who remembers 2009? Does anyone else here remember 2009, 2010? No? Okay, yeah, Brent does. Okay.
Kind of.
You know what happened back in 2010, 2009?
Swine flu?
So the bird flu, right? So I think this difference between the bird flu and the coronavirus might be a little political, because when we look at the numbers, it was, I think, just in that 1 year, 2009 to 2010, 250,000 people worldwide died. Like, that's 250,000 people, and 10,000 of those deaths were in America. That's insane compared to coronavirus. And what are we at? Like, only 1,000 that 1,500 infected in the U.S. right now. That's nothing compared to the H1N1.
Okay.
So something like 60 million people were infected. And here's why I think the difference is being played out so much. So what happened?
But what's wrong with
2009, right? 2009.
what you just said, though? What's wrong with what you said?
Hold on, Bobby, let Alex finish his thought and then chime in.
Yeah, so 2009 is back when Obama got elected, right? So when we looked at the media back then, we saw Fox News was panicking as shit, but like the rest of the media was kind of chill. I think there is a sort of a political agenda at work here, because now we're seeing the opposite. We got Fox News is all chill about the virus and just like parroting whatever Trump says, but the rest of the media is panicked. So that might be one explanation. Another explanation might be like the degree of technology. We just have more technology and we're more interconnected. We have more people using Twitter, more people using Facebook, so that when something like this happens, we actually can respond to it. Because back in the day, when you had like the Black Plague, there was no fucking Renaissance Italy Twitter. There's no like, hey, Michelangelo just tweeted fucking whoever to get out of Venice or whatever. None of that shit. But now we have more and more people using technology, and I think that might be a second reason for this whole panic. But anyway.
Okay. And so, what was the statistic though you gave for the H1N1? You said within a year.
So H1N1 was in the U.S. alone, 60 million infected, 10,000 dead, and that's just America.
And
worldwide, it was 250,000 people who died.
How long did that? It was the final product, right?
Your audio's cutting out. I can't hear you. Can you guys hear Bobby?
I think Bobby's audio is cutting out, but I think
no way.
General
my audio's cutting out.
It was a little bit, but I think I can. Okay. Bobby, let me know if this is not what you meant.
Okay.
Bobby was saying like, hey, that's all in retrospect. 10, 11 years later, we can look at the final numbers. Yeah. I think Bobby's point is that coronavirus is probably at the early point of inflection that will play out over many months. Which is about
that. First off, that alone, right? I mean, it's been weeks, right? I mean, it's been weeks, months, but also we don't even have tests. We haven't even been testing for it. Okay, we've tested what, like 1,000 people or something, like something super low, like ridiculously low. Like 10,000 people, I think we've tested in all of the U.S. The CDC alone has only tested 77 people. Okay, so we don't even know what the numbers are because we don't even have enough tests to do the numbers, and so it's totally messed up, dude. And so far,
Bobby,
the experts, all that.
According to Dr. Ed Park, an article that I read that he wrote March 8th, South Korea tested 140,000 people, and they found the coronavirus confirmed more than 6,000 cases, and the fatality rate was about 0.6%. So I know you were referring to U.S., but that's according to Dr. Ed Park about South Korea.
Dang, it was only 0.6% mortality?
Yeah, and a really important data point that I want people to hear, I just keep repeating it, is that this is primarily killing elderly people. This is not, there's been no confirmed deaths of anybody under the age of 10 and anybody under the age of 50.
But they're getting diagnosed.
Yeah, they're getting diagnosed, but it's not the end of the world, man. You have some flu-like symptoms for a few days, and then it goes away, just like the flu or some other things. It sucks.
Another thing I heard, I want to ask you guys about.
I just read a recent article, dude, that people who are infected who survive.
Some are worse than others. Have you heard this?
Yeah. Rowan brings up an interesting point here. There's actually now what the scientists are saying. I prefer to listen to the scientists and not the media. The scientists are saying we got two strains now. We got the S strain and the L strain. So the L strain, that's the deadlier one. We've spotted that one in Italy. So some of these we don't know too much about it, but I hope it still only affects like a very tiny percent of the population and not the rest of us. Because maybe if you look back in history, the Spanish flu, that virus also used to only kill old people. But then 1 year later, it mutated, and then it started killing young people too. So I'm wondering, is that what might be happening with the coronavirus, so to speak? Is this
good point?
Eventually arrive in the States, not just Italy. Who knows?
Yeah, it's going to mutate for sure, especially since it's so widespread. And another piece of research that came out is that people who say having like 20 to 30% lung capacity or 20 to 30% decreased lung capacity. And there's actually, they've recently found somebody who got reinfected also in Japan. Hey, I'll be back in like 1 minute. I'm just gonna walk over here with laptop.
Cool, yeah.
Okay. So Corey says, "You guys really buying the media hype?" I want to say no. We are not buying the media hype. The reason I'm dressed like this is because it is while the virus doesn't kill young people, it still is like really uncomfortable to get the virus. Some of these women in Seattle, they're testifying what it's like to have the coronavirus, and some of them are saying it's like 10 years of pain just pain and suffering.
Wow.
That coronavirus.
Really?
Sorry, 10 days.
One lady
10 days,
said she
10 days.
recovered really quickly.
Oh, sorry, I meant to say 10 days, not 10 years. But fuck, it's really I just don't want to get sick. That's all. But what I will say this: the panic will kill more than the actual virus, and a large part of that blame will be on the media and also on these social media platforms that make panic and fake news easier to spread. So
Right.
I think what we should do right now is we should really enjoy what we're doing right now. This podcast right now. This could literally be taken down next minute. Like these freedoms and rights we have, any minute they could go. Because the moment the government decides, like, hey, we don't want people spreading information about the coronavirus, so we're just going to shut down YouTube. We're going to shut down Twitter. We're going to shut down Facebook to avoid people spreading information to each other. And you know these websites.
Hey, I want to ask you guys about I saw Mark Zuckerberg. He was actually saying that they're like working with the World Health Organization to like censor different types of information about the coronavirus if they deem it to be misinformation. You know, it made me think like, what would they deem to be misinformation? Maybe it's like they next thing that they're gonna say, oh, you're promoting colloidal silver. You're thinking colloidal silver is gonna kill the coronavirus. They might try to censor. I'm afraid to even post things about colloidal silver now, or even like garlic, like on the Eternal Life fan club, because they might be like, "Hey, that's disinformation."
Were you guys watching? Were you guys watching the Trump announcement today? I was so scared, dude. I thought he was going to declare martial law, because once martial law gets declared, that's when you start getting like the censorship and whatnot. But Corey C in the comments here, he's saying it's about the government gaining more control, restricting freedoms. There's much more serious epidemics going on, and that's absolutely true. The panic will kill more people than the disease, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't prep for the panic. The panic is still a very real threat. So, I mean, a lot of people I've been doing this prepper shit for like months now, and it was really a life extension that got me into it. And I was going to the store I got like 3 years worth of food now, and people thought I was crazy. But like in my area of SoCal, like the shit has already hit the fan. Like I just went to the store with my friend, and like not only is the toilet paper gone, the medicine aisle, like all the Tylenol is flying off the shelves. There was like 4 things of Tylenol left. And then on the vitamins, there's like a whole row for like vitamin C and immune support, empty, fucking empty. So while you still got like some food you can go get, you're already starting to see the first symptoms of shit hits the fan. And I think people aren't paying enough attention to how this game of musical chairs is going to unfold with this virus getting worse and worse. But
what I'm worried about is like, what if they decide to like start spraying all these chemicals everywhere, like they did in China? And what if those chemicals are worse than the worst for me than the actual coronavirus? Like, what if the chemicals like kill me?
I don't know too much about that, but I would say that
you have seen like the footage of like spraying everywhere in China, right?
I don't think that stuff like that, the stuff that happened in China will happen here. But okay. I honestly, I'm not even too optimistic about martial law being declared, because when was the last time that actually happened, right? I think it was 9/11. It's been a long time since we declared martial law. Oh, I think Bobby's back. He's doing something with the camera. Oh no, that's Rowan.
Sorry, I just
something wrong with the camera.
Yeah, I had to do that.
Okay, yeah, so like I was saying, while this virus isn't the most dangerous thing, like H1N1 was way more dangerous, like 10 times more dangerous. That doesn't mean you shouldn't still prep for this shit hits the fan scenario. I think it'll last. I don't think it'll last years, but it'll definitely last maybe weeks and months. So, look, let's talk about our zombie apocalypse plan, right? So I think location. Got to figure out where's the best place to go, because I can't stay holed up in here forever. People are going to start. People are going to start like, I don't know, pushing each other's shit in. So you don't want to be in an urban area like I'm in right now. So there's this book I recommend everyone get. It's called Strategic Location: The North American Guidebook to Save Places. And it's like it's about like where to live when the shit hits the fan. And the whole idea, the general theme of the book, is to position yourself away from people, but not too far away from people. You don't want to be like this rugged, lone individualist type of thing that's usually portrayed in post-apocalyptic movies, right? You want to have some people with you so you can like rebuild a community.
Right,
really,
I agree.
Really hard to be self-sufficient, because if you get sick, there's no one to take care of you. Or if you break your leg, other people can't harvest, or there's no other people to do your harvest or hunt for you. So so it's about the middle ground, I'd say.
Totally. So I had another thing I wanted to talk to you guys about with the coronavirus. What do you think about? I heard that some people are saying this is causing like racism against Asian people. That's crazy. I mean, it probably is causing racism against Asian people. That's pretty absurd that it would be doing that.
Honestly, I'm hearing the Italian jokes now too. Like me and my work.
Oh,
buddies,
really?
Me and my work buddies were like, "Hey, let's go out to eat. Let's go to Olive Garden or some shit." And he's like, "Oh wait, the chef's Italian." And I don't know. People are throwing the Italian jokes around too. So.
I mean, we don't need coronavirus to give people an opportunity to be racist at a global scale.
Yeah.
I think the fair points here is that the Chinese do eat these rather exotic animals like bats and things like that in these markets, and there's a lot of people congregated in small places, in many places like in Wuhan, where this virus has been said to be started. So there's legitimate points there, but of course, racism shouldn't be tolerated, for any reason. And
Exactly. So, especially because people eat weird things in every culture. Like, I mean, there's cultures. I mean, even America, people would think it's weird that we eat. What's the weirdest thing Americans eat? Like, we eat weird things that cause deadly viruses too.
So I mean, we like the Europeans.
Pork.
I'm saying
pork. Isn't that contributed to the swine flu, right? Because we're eating pork.
Also,
Americans probably eat more pork than anything, right?
If you look at like the traditional Abrahamic religions, a lot of you can see just like the connection between your diet and geography, right? So also like in Europe, a lot of the times what you eat is based on your surroundings, and this brings up feast and famine cycles, because China has been going through shit that we haven't been going through. Like the past 100 years for Westerners has been, like, despite the world wars, pretty comfy, so to speak. But in China, you had like Mao, you had the Cultural Revolution, you had all this, like, you had these long cycles of famine. So it's the past 3 generations he's been like conditioned into eating like their pets when they start. Nothing wrong with that. But the thing is, they've kind of like internalized that into their culture. So they don't know. Like, I think once food becomes more abundant, like a couple of provinces, I think, have banned like cooking dogs and stuff. I think like they're going to start to realize this is like this kind of diet belongs strictly in the famine cycles. But yeah, anyway, now that Italy is getting all these infection rates, I think China's going to start being more honest to us, because like since our eyes are more trained on Europe, like the new epicenter of the pandemic, I think they're going to start being more transparent now that there's not so much pressure on them. What do you guys think?
What was your question again? Sorry, I was like paying attention to my camera. Freaking
did you
fell on the ground. Sorry.
I was thinking like, what do you guys think is next for China? Because I have a friend in China and he hasn't contacted me back. The last I heard from him was like he couldn't go outside, and like he was like rationing his own food, and it was, and then after that I didn't hear from him. I think he's fine. It's just that maybe you don't have as much like freedom to even use the internet there or like access your utilities. So I think that might be a possibility. What do you guys think will like? Do you think?
Yeah, it's very. The government controls everything.
Well, I couldn't get Alex's question there. Alex, can you just ask your question real quick?
Oh yeah. So do you guys think like Europe will become the new epicenter of the pandemic, because like they have like sort of less authoritarian control over their government? You got less police sort of blockading the roads and shit, and keeping people locked up in their homes, and less curfew and shit like that. Do you guys think it'll get worse in Europe than it is in China?
I actually heard, and I don't want to spread rumors, but I just read a few hours ago that apparently, Italians had to ask their government to even like leave the house for non-essential things, or go into the hospital, things like that, things other than that. I don't know if that's true or not, and I don't know how they could even enforce something like that. So somebody fact check me on that. I'm certainly not stating that's a fact. It's just something I was reading recently, like 3 hours ago. But these kind of things I've studied in college, like the mass hysteria of crowds and groupthink. And it's something that I also brought up, I think, when we were live streaming last time or the time before, that book I have back there, The Alchemy of Finance by George Soros, and how, this stuff works. And people are irrational, man. I try to be as data-driven as a person as possible with as many decisions that I make in my life, and especially the most important ones, like your lifestyle, that can affect aging and your health and things like that, and your money, right? So how I invest. And I'll just say, like, by the actual data right now, people are not acting rationally whatsoever. And it's our leadership at every level globally that are failing us right now, in my opinion, and their communication of this, I watched Trump a couple nights ago, his 10-minute speech. I thought, for Trump, it was actually pretty good, based off some other things that he said, based off facts regarding coronavirus.
Did you see the market response right after the speech? So I was day trading today, and I thought like this would be the chance to buy the dip in the morning, and I think I did buy the dip. Like right now, the Dow's at like 23,000. Before that, it was like 21,000. So I made thousands of dollars today. That's great for me. But
congrats, yeah.
We don't know if this is the bottom. We don't know how low how bad this recession is going to get. But I think Trump gave his speech at 3, and right at 3 o'clock, the stock market just like shot back up. I think it was like a 1,500 point increase in the Dow. But
you say at 3 o'clock Pacific time today, right?
I think it was at 3 o'clock their time. So for us, it would be like 12 o'clock, right?
And are you talking about today, Friday the 13th of March, or are you talking about yesterday?
He gave the speech today, right?
Well, I saw him give like a 9-minute speech. I watched it on YouTube last night.
Yeah, that was it. He was supposed to declare a state of emergency.
Yeah, I watched that last night. So unless you're talking about a newer speech he gave today, I'm talking about one that came out probably over 24 hours ago now.
Is that the one where he says things will get better, or is that?
It was like 9 minutes. I watched it on YouTube. It was straight through, unedited. So I'm assuming I watched the same version that everybody else watched. He was sitting in the Oval Office at his desk.
Oh, speaking of which, how are your stocks doing? Your Tesla.
So Tesla's essentially cratered over the last month or so, but it's still higher than it was 5 weeks ago because it went up so much. So I think it's at like $540 a share right now, whereas it did hit $969 at a peak. But investing's all about long term. So it was at like 300 back in just like December. So. It's a bummer to lose money anytime, but I don't really day trade. I'm a long-term investor. So,
were you all in this time, or do you have like cash in reserve for when?
No, I have cash. I have
that's
cash
good.
in reserve, so I could always, I've actually been waiting for a dip for many years now, and it just hasn't happened, and it's kind of happening right now. So I've been thinking about buying more, but as you were just kind of alluding to, it's really hard to time the bottom. So, that's very difficult to do, and I want to continue to see how this coronavirus plays out. Another thing, that Alchemy of Finance, George Soros talks about for investing that's really important is that you can have your own belief about how things should go, but as an investor, you should be trying to figure out how things will go, what other people think. And then if other people are doing that too, then we're playing this mass psychology game. Look at what's happening with toilet paper right now at Costco and those places.
It's so crazy. Some people have more toilet paper than they have food.
Right? So think about it. Why is toilet paper sold out? Well, even rational people like me could say, you know what? I got plenty of toilet paper at the house here to last like a month or two. But if everybody else is being irrational about toilet paper, then toilet paper doesn't decay anytime soon. It doesn't cost much money. Why don't I just go in and get my toilet paper before it's all gone? That's a very rational thing. And if everybody's saying that, then it makes things irrational globally, because so in other words, people being rational at their individual scale for them can make the whole system irrational. And that can happen in pretty much everything. I'm just using toilet paper as an example. So we need to keep that in mind, with all sorts of sporting events and concerts and other things being canceled. My basketball league was canceled Thursday night. hey, like, has anybody thought about that? That's my exercise, and that's how I keep my immune system strong to fight off coronavirus. Does anybody see the irony here? Right?
Oh yeah, and here's another irony: the fear could cause some people to lack sleep because they're all thinking and they're anxious and they're worried and they're not sleeping, and they're going to ruin their immune system, and then they're going to get the coronavirus because they were too afraid.
Right. So I just don't give into that fear, man. I try to let my decisions be determined by data primarily. And if you look at the data, you know, there's not much to worry about here unless you're 80 plus years old and have a weak immune system and you're like outside, you know, in public.
What about if you're 60?
If you're 60, there's a little bit more to worry about, but I think there's chances of you dying from coronavirus are still like 1.3% if you contract it. And the chances of you contracting it are super low as well too. So
yeah, like I think Rowan, pull up that graph again. So it was 3% for people in their 60s, and then it goes up to 8% for people in their 70s, and then it goes up to like 19% for people in their 80s. So
what do I type in to get this? What do I type in to get this graph again?
Type in coronavirus death rate by age. This is like a 5,000 person sample size. I think that's somewhat easy.
Okay.
But yeah, anyway, as long as people are, it's this whole toilet paper thing is just making me realize how irrational people are, and that's why I'm kind of pessimistic about economics ever becoming a hard science, because people just don't behave rationally. You'll never be able to predict in the way that you predict a chemist or a physicist would predict.
Toilet paper itself is irrational because you could get a bidet, and then you just rinse your butt with water. And it's cleaner, it's better. Freaking toilet paper sucks. Why don't people just get on with the bidet? America's so far behind the times. Like
Japan knows their shit, literally. Like they know their shit. I mean, Japan is the future. Like if you go to Japan, it's like they're always like 10 years ahead of us. I think like half of the cyberpunk aesthetic is just based on regular Japan alone. If you go to like
love bidets. I just love them.
If you go to like Shinjuku at night while it's raining, it's like indistinguishable from like the Blade Runner scenes. I think that's interesting. But yeah, this whole economics and rational agents, we could really get into this discussion if you want to have the whole game theory discussion.
Well, like something that needs to be understood by most people is that the forefront of economics right now in the future is something called behavioral economics, which wasn't even really a thing 10 years ago. So I graduated college in 2007. And if you were to take, economics 101 back then when I was in college, I don't think the term behavioral economics would have even come up. And so what Alex was talking about before is talking about economics as a science. Like, yes, we are using scientific things in economics like mathematics and certain, use of statistics. However, economics involves people, and people, you can never measure people using science, determining, based off their behavior. Economics is behavior of people. And so you can see how so many things, are affected in reality to screw up the behavior of people. So I'm not poo-pooing economics. It's really important. Everybody should understand economics at a basic level, and we would have a much better, more rational planet, because most people do not understand economics at all. And
I would recommend Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell. That guy's a genius.
Yes, that's a good one. I also highly recommend a book called Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. It's written in 1946, and if you read that book now, you're like, wow, this dude's super smart. What he basically lays out is every chapter is about something different. So one chapter is about tariffs, one chapter is about subsidies. Obviously, it starts off with the broken window fallacy, which is like economics 101. And he just explains to you how basically all these certain policies or maneuvers governments or politicians can use are just ways of them giving power to people they want to give power to, essentially, and taking power from people that they want to for either short or long-term periods. But really, free market economics is the best way to have the most, to make people's lives better, in the long term. And that's very evident if you look at places like Singapore and Hong Kong and America in general. The freest places economically become the most prestigious from an economic standpoint. And that affects their lifespan, which is what we should eventually get to talking about in every conversation, because that's what we care about most. If you want to live longer,
have you ever read the Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Just final thing. If you want to live longer, then you should support, freedom and the most free economic policies possible.
I was just going to ask you about like
Absolutely.
that microstates earlier. Have you ever read? Are you familiar with the work of Curtis Yarvin and the patchwork model, the 1,000 Liechtensteins model?
I don't think so.
It's essentially this. People call it neo-feudalism, but that's kind of misleading. What he's essentially advocating for is a more decentralized, like he's politically like right wing, like ultra right wing, but this ideology could be applied all over the political spectrum. Essentially, these city states like function better, like in terms of like bureaucratically than these huge federal land masses. And he thinks that's sort of going to be the future. But if we, what you said earlier about freedom and when the broken window fallacy, I think that has some interesting political implications, because when you start interfering with the minutia of people's lives, they won't be able to self-organize into a system where they can achieve equilibrium and consensus. And a really good argument for this, Rowan, I want you to pull something up. This is really important. So go to Google Images. I want you to pull up the prisoner's dilemma. So a lot of you people have probably heard of prisoner's dilemma. I think it's like a very well-known argument, but essentially I'm going to explain it. So let's say two members of a criminal gang are arrested and imprisoned, right? Each prisoner is in solitary confinement with no means of speaking or engaging with the other. And the police say they don't have enough evidence to put these guys away, right? So here's their plan, is to sentence both to a year on a lesser charge if they don't rat. So essentially, when the image Rowan's about to pull up, it's kind of like a matrix, right? So if both prisoners, they don't snitch, they remain silent, each of them get 1 year. That's the best possible outcome. Now, if they both testify, they each get 2 years. So that's the worst possible outcome, because that's a total of 4 years rather than 2 years. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because if one is silent and the other testifies, they get 3 years. So here's some kind of noise.
Some noise is coming in here.
Oh, it's Bobby.
Noises. Hey,
Bobby, mute yourself. It's like a weird squeaky noise in your mic.
Oh yeah, Bobby's definitely got.
Okay, so essentially what I was saying is here's where the argument comes in, right? So obviously the rational thing to do would be to rat on your neighbor, and that way you get 0 and they get 3. But here's where it gets interesting. Let's say we play the game. Let's say we play it 100 times, right? So the first time one person will rat on the other, right?
We got feedback.
Sorry.
Bobby, mute yourself.
Cool.
Feedback?
I think we took care of it.
Okay. Yeah, so if you play the game once, obviously someone's going to rat on their neighbor, right? But let's say we play the game 100 times, so now these prisoners, they're feeling the effects of being. Sometimes both of them will rat each other out, and they'll get 4 years. And then the next time around, maybe one of them will decide not to rat them out, and then they'll get 3 years. And then maybe the prisoner will want to get revenge. It's called tit for tat. That's what game theorists call it, is when you try to get revenge. And essentially, the prisoners are like, hey, I really hate being unable to cooperate. So eventually they start trying something different. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So eventually they try something different. And eventually they'll learn that they can get less time in prison, both individually and collectively, if they don't rat on each other, if they both stay silent. So what you get is like an emergent system where they're ratting on each other and whatnot, but eventually they reach an equilibrium where the prisoners, despite not being able to talk to each other, understand the consequences after playing the game 100 times. So what this means is that decentralized systems that allow people to sort of achieve spontaneous order are inherently better than systems that would sort of coerce people to move around, because then they would never learn this lesson. You need the market to kind of teach people lessons. That's why I think there's what Brent was saying earlier, that has some serious implications in game theory, and a whole field of that related to its implications for politics.
You also just described
very interesting stuff.
Cryptocurrency investor, it's decentralized. So, which cryptocurrencies got crushed yesterday too, man. Bitcoin went down at one point 50% in one day.
5,000 now.
Yeah, it hit 3,800 on Coinbase. I checked yesterday, and yeah, man, it was brutal. I mean, I lost tons of money yesterday. What's that?
How much did you have in crypto? Were you all in?
Yeah, I don't share exact numbers, but quite a bit.
A
and I
lot?
lost, yeah, quite a bit.
Hey guys, there's a few more topics about the coronavirus I'd like to discuss with y'all.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the government, I want to know your guys' opinion on the government-issued treatment. Like, if you were to get diagnosed with coronavirus and end up in a hospital, right? They would give you some kind of antiviral. Like, would you guys take this? Like, let's say you guys actually were diagnosed with the coronavirus, and would you go to the hospital? Would you go along with the plan, or would you be more skeptical and want to fight it naturally? Would you be afraid of such treatment? I forgot what the actual treatment is called, but it's a certain antiviral drug that they're giving people. They actually have a treatment, I guess, for the coronavirus. What do you guys think about this?
I think I would never like. There's gonna come a time where no matter what people say, I'm not gonna leave my house, because I think the time for bugging out, going to I think that's what I was planning to do, but apparently we don't have time. So I'm gonna instead of bugging out, I'm gonna bug in. So the best chance you have is just don't touch your face, don't touch your nose, don't rub your eyes. Wear gloves when you touch it. Throw them out at the end of the day. I got like a fucking 2 boxes of gloves here. They'll last me the whole pandemic. But you want to just never get the virus in the first place. I think that's the best course of action, is to just also take your vitamin C pills, assuming those haven't run out at your local store yet. That's
Also, you forgot to mention your colloidal silver nebulizer. This is what I do, literally. Like, if there's someone comes over to the house, I turn on my colloidal silver nebulizer and I just turn it on and I inhale the silver into my lungs. This is for real. It's safe. It's safe. You know.
Holy fuck, dude. Yeah, dude, I'm taking lifestyle treatments, so I'm not even that scared of corona.
Silver kills everything, you guys. Silver kills everything. I believe it will help. You got to get it into your lungs, though. I mean, corona is like a lung infection. I'm honestly a little afraid of the antiviral corona treatment.
Sketch.
I would say that as well, but given that we have this huge history of like alchemists using silver to treat people for like medicine, like they also used leeches, but it's silver that's the most consistent over the civilizations. You see it in China, you see it in Europe, you see it in India. It's just something about silver that makes it very applicable in medicine.
Silver is the most antimicrobial molecule known to humans. I was a silver investor from like 2008 to 2011 and learned quite a bit about it. I've also been a gold investor at certain points, and yeah, silver is incredible. I mean, on top of the fact that it's been used as money, second most to gold primarily for all of human recorded history, it's got a lot of other super interesting facts and traits about it.
Yeah, if you're gonna diversify your portfolio, and you got your ETFs, your healthcare stocks, your consumer staple stocks, you got your cryptocurrency and whatever. Another place to diversify is like the precious metals, but don't put all your money into that because it's not going to grow. Like precious metals, they're not an investment because they stay flat over time. Like if the currency goes out of control or the stock market crashes, the precious metals are always reliable. So this is my personal philosophy, but I always have like 6 months of expenses saved in precious metals, and it's always silver, not gold. And here's why: because when you have gold and you're trying to like sort of rebuild civilization in your no-go zone or whatever, and you want to like just go buy a loaf of bread, you can't do that with gold. You got to have silver because it's divisible. It's there's a reason like all these civilizations used it as currency, like their main currency, because you don't spend like $1,000 in a day. Like a gold coin, that's $1,000. You don't spend that in a day. So yeah, that's just my word of advice: 6 months of silver. Don't go all Peter Schiff and start putting your life savings into it. But yeah, you know.
My word of advice is get a colloidal silver generator. They're so cheap. I mean, you can get a colloidal silver generator, a really nice one, for like $60. I mean, you get a few silver bars, you put them into the water, you apply some electricity, and the freaking silver turns into the water. I mean, it's awesome. You're getting silver particles.
Hey, Peter Schiff recently had a video of him talking about the economic collapse of the coronavirus.
But he does that every year.
I want to check that out. It's probably pretty good.
Yeah, I'll just say something real quick about Peter from like what Bobby just said, and then Alex's reply. You know, I've been on the internet on YouTube like well over a decade now, watching Peter Schiff and other people like him, and I was kind of in a bad place in 2009, 10, 11 for a little bit there because I had just graduated college in 2007, and the whole economy was imploding, and people were telling me I was lucky to have a job making $32,000 a year in Silicon Valley, California. And I was like, I had a car, but I couldn't even fill up gas really to get to work because I didn't have enough money saved up, and gas was over $5 a gallon at one point. And even though I was as intelligent as possible, I feel like with I got a Gold Gym membership, $10, a month. Elon Musk said he was showering at Gold's Gym when he was in his 20s in the early 90s doing his startup, and I knew that back then, so I was doing stuff like that, and I was biking to work. I bought a bike and doing all this stuff, but like it was tough. So those people like Peter Schiff and Alex Jones and some other, doom and gloom type people, they got too far into my head, and I missed out on some opportunities. I mean, I should have bought a house in 2011. I had enough money saved up by the end of 2011 to buy a house. And that's what I should have done. It took me a few more years, and I finally did. Didn't take me more years of time to do it from saving the money. It took me more years of time to do it from pulling the trigger. And so in any event, all I'm saying is like the doom and gloom people like Peter Schiff, for example, they've been saying a lot of the same stuff for like over a decade now. And he did correctly predict the 2007-8 crash from like 2006. And, the Peter Schiff was right video on YouTube's gone viral. But everybody just, think a little bit, be critical of people, and nobody can predict the future. The future is incredibly complex as far as how markets will play out and how the coronavirus will spread. So everybody just like focus on the data, be humble, and try to keep gathering information rather than pretending like you know the answer, or some person that like Peter Schiff, who might have very strong language and a large audience, knows the answer,
And also stop being a Keynesian. Stop being a Keynesian and stop breaking windows. Anyway, yeah, that's very
those things too.
So you graduated.
So there's a few more things about the coronavirus we should discuss. A few more coronavirus-related topics, okay?
Just one more thing. So Brent graduated into a recession, and just like I kind of like want to learn how he got out of the hole. How did he dig himself out? And I think there's people in the comments who'd like to learn too, because he's like the most senior investor out of all of us.
I'll give real quick tips so we can get back to coronavirus, because that's like the theme of this live. So like a lot of books.
I'm like being such a bad example. I'm like literally biting my freaking fingers. Like, why freaking doing this? Oh no.
Rowan, I can send you some gloves if you want. Let's do the bug out.
I have gloves, but
so I'm gonna probably do a video where I have a lot of the books that I've read that are behind me over the last 15 years or so, and like why I read those books at specific times. And so one of the books I read is Charles Schwab's Insights to Investing, that he's rewritten a few times, but that book got me to realize when I was in high school, like, oh shit, I have to start investing or I'm going to lose. I'm guaranteed to lose. If you don't invest in something, real estate, stocks, probably, I invest in high growth stocks because they can grow the fastest. You can get wealthy the fastest. So I read that book, so I already knew that. So I knew certain things, right, to that point. And then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I read certain books. I'm like, all right, I read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I mean, that book was written like in the 1930s, I think, or somewhere, but it's still incredible. So I read these books, so I was just saving money, being smart, being conservative with my money, knowing that you have to save or you're just like losing. We've created a Keynesian global economy now where people just want to spend. We have a whole economy based off consumerism and spending, disposable income. But really what you want to be doing is living well below your means and saving. So I already knew those things. It was hard to pull the trigger on like what to invest in. I did pretty well in Netflix stock. I had a colleague of mine who was the 8th employee at Netflix, so he knew some people there, and I got some information from him that was helpful. You just stay smart. You realize Warren Buffett, I got Warren Buffett's book back there, Snowball. He says, he makes like one decision a year, basically. You don't have to hit every pitch. It's like, all these pitches coming in the baseball analogy, you just got to hit one, knock it out of the park, so just keep being smart. You don't have to do everything and invest everywhere. Just, I'll do a video where I talk about like all the books that I've read, and like I'll give a quick synopsis of them, and maybe that video will be about an hour or so to run through those things. So
Yeah,
Maybe check that out.
we'll revisit the sort of investment finance thing at the end of the podcast. We'll get back to the coronavirus, but yeah, I like how you mentioned Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I've been trying to get my dad to read that book because he's a very hardworking Eastern European who fled from Soviet Russia, and they never the Soviet bloc, and they never taught people how to properly invest their money so it grows. How to it was always taught just work hard and things will follow. And you really gotta educate that they gotta deprogram themselves from that mindset. But I was sort of raised here, so I don't have that same mindset.
Right.
Yeah, we'll revisit that question for sure. Rowan, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah. So I was gonna talk about. I wanted to revisit the topic about the two strains. Okay, I think this is very interesting. I think most of the audience would be a lot of them would be like, what the heck? We didn't even know this. They think there's just one strain. So a lot of people don't even know this, that there's a deadlier strain that was in Italy. I think we should talk about this more. And for people who aren't afraid, let's say Brent, you're not that afraid of the coronavirus. Are you afraid of the deadly strain? Let's say the deadly strain broke out in America. Is that concerning to you? And also, Alex, you might know more about this deadly strain. I actually don't know much about it. Is this deadly to people our age, middle-aged people, or is this mainly just deadly to older people?
For the sake of intellectual integrity, I want to say I don't have enough information to answer that question. But I'll always be open to the possibility that will happen. Touch as little things as possible. Kind of minimize your contact. Places where people go. If you have to open a door, this is my most important advice on this entire live stream. If you have to open a door, open it with your elbow or your shoulder or what. If it has a door handle, and you must touch it, just use your elbow. And if you have those push doors, just use your shoulder.
I'll say one quick thing on that, guys. This is all just really good advice for just living life, not just coronavirus right now. And, the advice that I try to give and that we all talk about, and the reason why you should follow us and subscribe to our YouTube channels that we have right now, and the one that we'll be coming out with that we've already recorded lots of interviewing longevity thought leaders. We're trying to give you advice on how to live as long as possible. Yeah, and the way that you do that is by increasing your health span. And the way that you do that is by doing all the things we talk about to keep your immune system and your body as healthy as possible, so that when everybody's freaking out, they want a quick solution. What do I do? Do I wear a mask? Do I buy all toilet paper? What do I do? This is a test that you should have been doing for your entire life, and you can't just cram for this exam overnight.
Alex is doing. We need to be preventative, dude. Okay, I mean, this is just we need to be preventative with everything, honestly. But I think, especially with pandemics, dude. Okay, we can't just be reactive.
I think Bobby and me are the most afraid, right? Is this correct? Let's take a show of hands. I'm kind of scared. I think I have more right to be scared because I don't have a spleen. What's your excuse for being scared, Bobby?
Is this a vote for who's scared?
I'm pretty scared.
I ain't scared, dude. I was prepared.
A vote for who's afraid.
I'm not prepared, dude. I had a chance to get a good mask, and I didn't grab it.
Okay, I've been preparing for this shit for 3 years. For 3 years, people have called me crazy. They called me a redneck prepper. Now I get to laugh. I say, I was fucking right, bitch.
I was gonna right say something, dude. Yeah. Hey, Brett brought up our YouTube channel. So everyone who's listening, we're doing a group podcast together, all of us, and we've been talking to a bunch of legit scientists and stuff, and transhumanists, blah blah blah. And so we're gonna start launching maybe a month and a half from now. I don't know, dude. We all need to get organized, and we need to edit all the stuff and whatever, and we have a bunch of other talks Liz Parrish, Aubrey Gray. We're gonna vlog tour. Corona's probably gonna kill us while we do that, and so make sure you subscribe to all our
you guys channels, want more viewers to this stream.
Subscribe to Eternal Life Fan Club. Subscribe to most importantly, subscribe to me, Life Extension Research. Okay, that's the most important. Okay,
if you guys want more viewers on this
Brent
stream,
Nowley, okay, subscribe to Brent Nowley too, because of what he said. Okay, we are literally going to help you live longer. Okay, that's just what we're going to do.
Heck yeah,
help us out.
For all you guys, if you guys want, if we're going to be streaming for another hour, if you want more viewers on this, you could post the link to this to you guys' followers base on if you guys want.
Yeah,
Up to you.
I posted on my Facebook right when we started, and I also posted the link to the Eternal Life fans group on Facebook.
Cool. Oh, so I was gonna ask about, let's say, hypothetically, they come out with a vaccine. Let's say the Jews who are developing this vaccine because they're freaking awesome. They're the people who would do it because they're the most advanced.
You're gonna
They come
piss
out
off.
with all
You're
the.
gonna piss off your alt-right following. They're probably like chammering in the comments right now.
I hope I don't have an alt-right following.
But yeah. So are you gonna ask us like, would we take the vaccine if we?
Would you take the vaccine? They said, okay, so I heard that they're gonna maybe come out with a vaccine a year from now, but apparently the Jews, because they're so like advanced and stuff, they were coming out with like in Israel, they were going to come out with a vaccine like much sooner because their scientists were already prepared for it because they're already testing a strain of the coronavirus like in their lab, so they're like way more prepared for it than normal than other people around the world in other countries. Yeah, so let's say they come out with the vaccine. Would you take it? I'd personally be a little afraid because I'm just afraid of vaccines.
I would say no because that would require me to go out and make contact with people, and the vaccine might not necessarily work per se on most people. So I'd say like I've got a safe house right now with guns, food, and medicine. I'm gonna be heading there. Shit gets out of hand. Like I hope honestly, as much of a prepper as I am, I hope it doesn't happen. I hope everything is fine and we all go back to normal. Like I'd rather this not happen than and not get to like laugh at everybody like haha I told you so than to like sort of get to gloat but the world has gone to shit, you know?
Dude, welcome to the great transhumanist game. Well, okay. Gennady Stolярov, the chairman of the United States Transhumanist Party, did a really good job at I did a video, two-part video of discussing the great transhumanist game. This is, imagine the coronavirus just press the play button on this game, right? And now it starts. The coronavirus, no matter how bad it gets, this is like, it's like maybe like 5% of how bad, things we're going to experience for the next 20 years. Okay, like the things we're going to have to fight through. Okay, we're going to have to fight through, rogue artificial, human level artificial general intelligence, synthetic biology, the climate crisis. What else do we got? We already got biochemical, warfare, and I'm sure there's gonna be way more powerful or way worse pandemics. And how about the worst? Okay, this is the final boss we're gonna have to fight. Is long distance brain computer interface hacking you by a malevolent, likely super intelligence, whether it's a human who genetically modified themselves, their intelligence, or it's an AI. Okay,
it's a great interjection there. I'm actually reading this book right now, like for our interview with Peter Voss. It's called Life 3.0 by Dr. Max Tegmark. He's like a physicist, but he's friends with Larry Page and Elon Musk. So he's got this huge network of AI researchers he learns from, and he sort of compiled all their wisdom into one book. It's called Life 3.0. And essentially the premise of the book is he divides evolution into 3 stages. You have Life 1.0, which is just organisms sort of just evolving. They can't modify.
Okay, so,
they have to wait for Mother Nature to do it for them. And then Life 2.0, that's when that's like us, right? We can modify our own software. Like I can teach Rowan things, Rowan can teach me things, and we modify our software, but we can't modify our hardware. Unless you're a Chinese genetically engineered baby, then you can modify your hardware. And Tegmark thinks we're headed towards stage 3. Life 3.0 is when you can modify both your hardware and your software. So we're going to be putting cyborg parts on ourselves. We're going to be doing genetic engineering shit, and also changing our brains. So like what you said about brain-computer interfaces, I think that goes way further than just consciousness. I think it also goes for like it has implications for embodiment and like personal identity. And this world, we can't possibly imagine what it would be like to live in a world where you don't have where your personal identity has been kind of deconstructed, so to speak.
all right.
But I do agree with that's the biggest
hey.
challenge of our lifetimes.
Great thoughts. Back on the topic of the coronavirus. So did anyone watch Liz Parris's interview with the coronavirus, like the virus expert? She recently did an interview with someone. Did anyone else watch that? Or am I the only one?
I haven't, but I plan to.
Posted the
I was
link.
just
Okay,
I
so
was just catching up on our Facebook messages, and I added it to my watch later list on YouTube to watch.
okay, it was very interesting. One of the points I agreed with the most is that regardless of whether we think we're personally at risk of the coronavirus, it's morally the right thing to be like not a carrier of it, or if you know, because there's old people who are definitely more susceptible, even if we think we're kind of safe from it. So she was making the point that yeah, we got to be like, okay, these old people, like, they're really at risk, so let's do everything we can to like not spread it to them. So in that sense, the media hype and everything, and this whole thing with the government's doing to prevent the spread of the virus, even though it seems a little bit more like, okay, Orwellian or whatever, government control. In a sense, it's morally good for old people. It's gonna save a lot of old people are freaking dying. Like, they have a bigger chance. So she just made a good point there, I think. That's all.
So Rowan, that brings up an interesting political question, because the three candidates we have fighting for the presidency right now, they're all above age 80. I think Trump is
70.
70.
They're all above age 70.
Okay. Well, I think.
Yeah. And then Trump, he was the question of whether he had gotten the virus because he was taking a picture with someone who.
I mean,
had
like
virus
people in the comments correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Trump is like 76. I think Biden is 84, and I think Bernie Sanders is 89.
I think Trump is no. I think Trump is 72 or 73, and then Biden and Bernie are in their late 70s. None of them are above 80.
Trump wants to live forever too, dude.
What's that?
Trump wants to live forever, Dr. Bill Andrews said.
Yeah, Bill Andrews told me that he met Trump at Mar-a-Lago. You know, I think this was like 2006 or something, before the crash. And yeah, I mean, Trump was interested in investing in Sierra Sciences. However, he just didn't propose a good enough investment for Bill Andrews to agree upon.
Is intertwined.
Okay, I just googled it. You were right. Trump is 73, Biden is 77, Bernie Sanders is 78. But I'm saying, like, deep into their presidency, if this coronavirus is going to become a seasonal thing, these people are going to hit the 80s, and their risk is going to like go up exponentially, because it's basically a dice roll if you die from the coronavirus at this age. So I mean, it could be an interesting time to sort of like explore new political ideas and how to sort of implement them. I'm coming up with this like this new video. It's going to be like a 1-hour video, and it's got like a list of practical like political propositions we could implement to sort of fix our economy and fix our like the broken system that doesn't allow people to spontaneously organize in ways that would be beneficial to us, like ways we can overcome acting against our own interests. I think that'll be, keep an eye out for that. I'll probably put it on my channel, or not, or maybe just start a new channel and put it on there. But yeah, shameless self-promotion. Go on.
All right, so one of my friends, back on the topic of coronavirus, they literally just sent this to me, so I thought I want your guys' opinion on it.
Sure.
They sent this. And just like that, the government controls all sporting events, concerts, jobs, colleges, medical facilities, whether or not you can leave your house. Has depleted resources such as toilet paper and food, controls all travel, and you guys wonder why they developed the use of viruses to scare the public. They now control you and everything about your life. See how easy it was? Mass panic, hysteria, complete control. Wait, let me finish reading.
Okay.
Wait, let me finish reading. Of literally the world over a virus, one that the survival rates are even extremely high. All freedom has been limited overnight. See how easy that was? So I guess that's just a point to see how, like, okay, the government is taking away our freedoms, like, freak. Anyways, that's it.
What do you guys think about speaking of government interference? What do you guys think about like?
Well, just real quick, you know, to the best of my knowledge, these things haven't been done or controlled by the government. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, the NBA shut down based off Adam Silver's decision, who's the commissioner of the NBA. And then shortly after, the MLB, the MLS, Major League Soccer, and the NHL followed suit, and they, suspended their leagues. And then the other NCAA conferences in basketball suspended their conference championships, and then after that, they suspended the whole NCAA tournament, as they suspended all college sports. So nowhere in this have I heard government, anywhere. And I followed these stories relatively closely. So the premise of your friend's comment is inaccurate based off the information that I've had.
Well, it could be. He's not saying the government directly talked to him. He's saying that, look, this is what the government could have done. You know, they have this power now.
If you listen to the comment, he's saying the government has done these things to control. Now,
Like, talk to the people.
Say that again, Bobby.
Like, you think the person in the comments is saying that the government specifically talked to the people, like people, you know?
I don't think this was in the comments. This is Rowan. Wasn't this one of your friends on social media who made this comment?
No, it was my friend. It's a comment that it was a screen capture and image. My friend didn't say this specifically, but they just sent the screen capture of this comment. It's basically been turned into a meme because people like the comment. It's like a quote from an anonymous person.
But I think if we take the true ethos of this point and remove the word government and insert like the elite or the people who control society, then the point to me is a little bit more valid. That, you know, there are people who essentially run the majority of the planet and the decision makers, you know, at many different levels, whether they're corporate or private or some type of version of both, like the Federal Reserve, for example, and they have massive power. And there's only a small group of people who really run and make decisions for so much of the things that actually happen on the planet. And we're just seeing that play out right now. You know, like, I'm a college basketball fan. I was looking forward to basketball. I like the NBA. You know, I try not to waste too much time on this stuff because I try to do things that actually affect my life. But I'm a University of Kentucky fan, and I was looking forward to that, and now it's gone because of coronavirus. And if you want to make the argument that we should be canceling all these sorts of events because of the flu and because of other things, you know, then that's fine. But saying that we should cancel these things because of corona and not the flu, which is killing more people, it just logically doesn't make sense to me from everything that I've heard. And I've tried to gather really good information. Rowan, we should talk about the Joe Rogan interview that he did on March 10th, that guy Michael. I thought it was a good interview, and I learned quite a bit, but I didn't learn anything more that would make me think that we should be canceling our entire society. He even said that we need to think before we just close down schools, because what's going to happen there? What are the ripple effects, you know, of all of our decisions? And that's what good economic policy is, taking it all back to economics, right? It's not just about what are the immediate effects of these policies, but what are the second, third, fourth effects? What happens 6 months, a year from now from the decisions we're making? And I personally believe that, you know, we're not making smart decisions right now for long-term global, economy.
Right. Wait, isn't the government actually enacting the laws that say a certain amount of people can't congregate together, let's say 150 people or 250 people? Isn't the government saying that's the rule?
I heard Gavin Newsom, who is the governor of California, today said that he can enact a law that says that no more than 250 people can congregate in a public place. However, he has not done that yet. He's just letting the public know that he can do this at any point. He has the power to do this in the state of California, if that's what you're referring to.
Oh, I thought it was already a law. They made it so more than 150 people can't congregate. You're saying that's currently.
That's just a hashtag on Twitter that says cancel everything, and the businesses are following suit. So it's voluntary. It's like I said, a spontaneous order of this response.
Everybody, fact check me on what I said there. That's just kind of what I've, heard about it. I was literally having a conversation with my wife today while we were walking our dog, and she was telling me what she read, and that's how she described it to me. So that's how I know what I know about that. But get out and walk your dog if you have a dog. Get out, get sunlight do the things that we talk about that's good for longevity. We make sure that we walk at least 3 miles every single day, unless it's raining. And today I really made sure that all other things, unless they were super high priority, went off the list, you know. And I got out and we did 3.5 mile walk today with our dog, and it was sunshine because the next 5 days is scheduled for rain where I live in Folsom, California. So I knew I had to get out there, get that vitamin D today, walk, breathe in the fresh air while I could before that opportunity is gone the next few days. You know, these are the things that people should be focusing on, not just fearing a bunch of stuff they can't really control much.
Me too. I've actually been making a point to get more vitamin D, like sunbathing and stuff like that. Not too long and not on my face. I cover my face because I don't want my face to age, but definitely a good idea there.
You should get about 15 minutes of, unexposed direct sunlight, even on your face every day. But after that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 15 minutes.
Most like while you're driving, if you have a long commute to work, just like lower the window and let the sun bake your face. That's what I do. But I also take like supplements just in case.
Wait, what's this thing about? Why is it important to get it on your face? Because you can still get vitamin D on your other parts of your body. I don't see why it's important to get it on your face.
Should actually look that up. I wonder why so much is absorbed through the face.
So just to be clear, Rowan, I wasn't referring to just the face. I was just saying in general, it's what study after study that I've read for many years. There's been scientific consensus that it's good to get 15 minutes of completely exposed sunlight on your body. So that would include face. I don't think it's necessarily like super important to get it on your face more than like other parts of your body. But in general, like I'm not wearing a mask, so I'm walking outside and trying to get 15 minutes. And typically you want to do it more in the early evening, right after sunrise, or early morning and early evening, right after sunrise and sunset. So the UV rays aren't as strong, but you're still getting, enough of it to get the vitamin D production in your body. Yeah, a lot of something that a lot of people don't really know is that you don't get the vitamin D from the sun. It's this weird thing that science doesn't fully understand, where the sunlight comes in and then your body actually produces the vitamin D.
Yeah, it's sort of you use like the cholesterol in your cell walls. You use that to like an electron hits the molecule and like reforms it into like an isomer or something, and then that gets like a group attached to it, and that becomes the vitamin D, like the cholesterol in your cell walls.
Right. And they say mushrooms can also create vitamin D if they're exposed to the light. They create vitamin D2. We create vitamin D3. Supposedly we can convert D2 into D3, but I take a sheep lanolin supplement. I think that's a D3. It's one of the best forms for us.
So yeah, changing topics. Did you guys say you wanted to bring Matt on? Raw Matt? Is he in the chat?
Oh, he's not. He's not here. I've been trying to contact him, but while we're on the
let's answer
subject,
some questions.
Is there any questions? Can you?
Yeah, we got Brandon Thomas.
Brandon is actually my friend, and he said butthole sunning. You guys know this is a thing now, right?
Yeah. So to answer, Brandon Thomas's question, I know this whole like red light therapy is like getting really popular, and I think that might have been the source of this myth. But I think just use your like intuition or your like rational thinking. If there's a place where the sun don't shine, and evolution made it so that sunlight doesn't get to the place where the sun don't shine, do you really think you should be shining sun where the sun don't shine? I don't know, just a thought, maybe.
Probably not. Probably not. I do like to sun my buns outside, but I do not push anything open, so I don't think my my butthole is actually getting any sun, to the best of my knowledge.
Our ancestors were naked, but they weren't bending over and aiming the cornhole, so to speak.
Yeah, certainly not for more than a few seconds at a time.
What I will tell Brandon though is there are scientific benefits to getting it on your balls, like red light, like sunlight, not just regular sunlight, but like red light, about 660 nanometers in length, maybe 20 minutes of exposure, depending on how close you are, maybe like a foot to 6 inches distance. You can sort of like increase your testosterone production.
Yeah.
How extensive is, I don't know, but there are a couple papers published on that.
Ben Greenfield says he does that every single day.
What's great about Planet Fitness is they have full body red light where you can actually strip down nude and get the full body red light machine. Pretty awesome.
I think that's a cash grab. I don't think you should. If you guys are listening, don't go buying Juve's giant full body red lights.
Oh no,
$1,000. I think most of the benefits you might want it for are testosterone production. So just get like a tiny light and shine it on your nuts. If that's what you want to do, 20 minutes a day, got a foot close to your nuts. I think start with that before you go on to these crazy biohacking treatments that bankrupt. You know what? take that 3,000 right now. The Dow's at 23,000. Go put that into a nice like VTH or BDC. That's healthcare and consumer staples. Those are going to be big when the recession hits. Or just put that into the VOO. That's like the SP 500. You could do that. I mean, that's way better. That'll get way more contribution to your life expectancy than spending it on a giant body, full body red light. Just a thought.
Definitely.
Hey, so Rowan.
So while we're on this, what?
Just real quick, you can go, but I just commented the link to Dr. Ed Park's blog about COVID-19. I thought that his blog was really good. It's a fairly quick read, maybe 5 minutes or so. And everybody should click on that link and check it out because Dr. Ed Park, in my opinion,
where did you post the link?
I think I just posted it into the live stream here comment.
Oh, okay.
So I also shared it on my Facebook as well too.
Cool.
Okay, let's get to we got more questions here. So Wolf Whiskey says, this is an off-topic question. God is non-existent. Nobody lives forever. I'm glad. Enjoy life to the fullest. You want me to respond to that? So
I'll just say I have my Immortalist magazine article coming out, and that's actually kind of how I start the article. I say that living forever is a non-scientific statement because nobody can ever prove that they've lived forever, because the way that time works is time, like the song, keeps on ticking, ticking, ticking into the future. So you can never say, I've done it, I've lived forever, because it just keeps going.
True.
But in general, I'm a guy who has a YouTube channel that my opening music is a remix of the 1980s song, Do you really want to live forever? It's, in general, we're saying, I'm personally saying I want to live as long and healthy as I possibly can, and science and the scientific research can allow. That's what I'm personally trying to do. And I don't want people to get the language too confused. And I don't think it's generally good that we go around saying, we're going to live forever. That can turn a lot of people
100% agree. Okay, I have to comment on this. 100% agree. That's why, the Eternal Life fan club, it's I'm a fan of Eternal Life. I never say, imagine how stupid it'd be if I went around saying, I'm gonna live forever. I know for sure. People do that though, and people even say they're immortal and all this bullcrap. It's insane. No, it's something we want.
Okay, I got
we desire to live forever, and we think it's possible because why not? It's technically possible if you never die. Of course, you can never say you've lived forever. It never ends. It's a never-ending quest, a never-ending pursuit, and at any moment you could fail, and it's always going to be that way. It's there's never a place where we're like, oh yeah, we're sure we're going to live forever. It's just, that's why I've made a point on my Eternal Life fan club so many times to say that it's like the fox and the hare. You have to be afraid of failure always. I'm always going to be afraid of failing, even when I'm alive, even if I'm living a billion years. I'm a billion years old. I'm still going to be oh crap, something could go wrong and I could die and lose it all.
I'm gonna be a dick and sort of maybe play devil's advocate against what Brent was saying. I'm actually a little bit more radical. I actually do believe the idea of eternity, as in forever, literally forever, despite the heat death of the universe. I think that is achievable, and I think there's 3 ways we can do that. I think the first way.
Wait a second. I don't think Brent was saying it's not achievable. He's just saying you could never say you've lived forever. He's not saying.
Yeah, I suppose so.
I don't think
we want to make the distinction.
Just to be clear, it's a non-scientific statement because you can never prove that you've lived forever, because the way that time works, as our little monkey brains currently understand it, is that it keeps on ticking. It keeps going. There's no end of it. And so then if you say that it does end in any scenario, whether it's the universe or the multiverse or some other kind of wormhole, whatever you want to say, any kind of other reality, then you could maybe transfer to that, but that keeps on going. So you can never prove that you've lived forever. That's all I'm saying.
I would agree with that. I'd say the idea of saying we can live forever is not a scientific statement because it's unfalsifiable. You can never do an experiment on someone who's lived forever. You could never have you can never have a sample size.
But let's not get too crazy with before you go, Alex, real quick, my general point as well, too, is that let's not get too crazy with semantics. What we should all be wanting and what we should all be aspiring to, and the communication and messaging we should be saying to others, is that let's just try and extend our health span and lifespan as much as scientifically possible, right? Anything beyond that is just, to me, getting a little bit too ridiculous and moving too far away from like science and the actual, kind of energy we want to attract to our movement.
I think Brett's right. Like, we got to distinguish between life extensionism and immortalism. But for once we've spread life extensionism far and wide enough, I think like if you go to my channel, I actually do videos on like not just life extension, but like literally living to eternity. And a lot of this is like it's centered around the video mind replication. That one is centered around the analysis of time. What is time? Like, is it an actual thing or is it an illusion? There's this idea? There's two ideas called like presentism and eternalism. I advocate eternalism, which says that there's actually in a fourth dimensional framework, the time can not only move forward but it can also move backward. And an interesting piece of evidence for this is the Wheeler-DeWitt equation. So essentially, when you plug the result into Einstein's theory of general relativity, you're going to have a value there, like a variable, t, exponent 2. And as we learned in high school or middle school, depending on which country you live in, that when you do an exponent, that exponent is 2, you can have either positive or negative, because two negatives will make the positive, and the two positives will also make a positive. So what it's essentially implying is that time doesn't have to move forwards; it can also move backwards. Maybe it's all relative, and evolution just sort of molded our brains in such a capacity that we can never understand what it's like for things to go in reverse and not forward. And what I'm saying is that if time is truly relative in this sense, then perhaps you could slow down your perception of time, perhaps slow it down infinitesimally, such that like perhaps 1 second feels like a million years. And this gets into the whole mind uploading shit and like, but the whole general idea is that like the neurons in your brain, they move at about 3 meters per second. Whereas if you had like a silicon brain with transistors, you would be moving at about half the speed of light. That's 150 meters per second. So just imagine how fast you can think, and the speed of your thought will make time it'll make time feel slower, such that perhaps 1 year in our human meatbag bodies could feel like perhaps a million years in a robot body, so to speak. So I think that's one way we could do it. Another way is
But to play devil's advocate here, even if you were to slow down your perception of time, just if it eventually ends, even if it's like a trillion billion years or whatever, but eventually you literally die in real life, when the perception of time, even if it's really slowed down or whatever, then that's still not living forever. Even if it appears, you have the perception of time that you're living billions of years, but if it still ends, you still die, and it's not living forever.
Yeah, so this gets into whole like the whole Zeno's paradox, and like how far can you extend your perception of time? Will there a limit, like perhaps the Planck shortest amount of time possible in our universe? And then you are saying it is a finite amount, and I think there's things we can do after that. There's this philosopher by the name of David Lewis. I don't know if you guys know David Lewis, but he's a really interesting guy. So he's the guy who coined this idea called modal realism. So modal realism means that there are counterfactuals, there are other universes, and they are just as real as our universe. He's not like some physicist doing like multiverse theory and shit. He's saying like with logic, you can literally sort of demonstrate that there other realities aren't only an option, but they are concrete things. And he has all these logical proofs for it. It's very interesting. But he also does this work on time travel and the grandfather paradox. And he's an advocate of the view that if you go back in time to kill your grandfather, you haven't actually killed your grandfather and then you stop existing. It opens up a counterfactual. And then in that counterfactual, you have killed your grandfather, but you are still alive. And I think this idea, if we can ever sort of, this gets into very theoretical physics, if we can ever find a way to sort of manufacture negative matter, this essentially is part of the ingredients for wormholes, essentially bending space and time, sort of going back to the beginning of the universe. Perhaps, what do you think would be a comfortable time? Maybe like, I don't know, a billion years after the Big Bang? That'd be a comfortable time. You get to the end of the universe, you keep going back to the start. You get to the end of that universe, you keep going back to the start, back to the start, back to the start. Essentially, it's a perpetual cycle, and you never sort of interfere with the original universe because you're opening up a counterfactual each time you do that. I think there's many ways. I don't want to derail the discussion.
We can also just live forever in the most simplistic terms possible. Like, even if this is the only universe, and we can't even solve our perception of time, and we can still just live forever just in this world by never dying. And even if there's the heat death or whatever supposedly that's going to happen, we can figure out how to stop the heat death, just live forever physically in this realm. That there's no other, right?
Just as a quick summary, I want to say, like, I totally support life extensionism first before immortalism. But let's say you're crazy like me and you want to go deep down the rabbit hole. I will make videos for you about this shit, like reversing the heat death of the universe. I got some pretty like wild.
Alex, I've been watching lots of your videos, and for those who haven't, seen them, it's Transhumania is the YouTube channel. I'm gonna eventually watch all yours. I went on a binge a couple weeks ago and just watched hours and hours. And yeah, it's really great stuff. They're really well done. I love all that, philosophical, theoretical stuff that you talk about, and the hard science, because you kind of do it all. But one thing that I want to point out on all the things you've been talking about recently is that something that's really not appreciated by the average person about what Einstein did with his E equals MC squared equation, which is energy equals the speed of light, energy equals mass times the speed of light squared, is that he basically also said with that time is relative, and that's something that's not fully appreciated or understood by the general population. So time is relative. We know that, and we can experience that in our own lives. And I think we even talked about this on a previous live stream, how if you're technically flying in an airplane, you're like a microsecond, younger than if you weren't, because time relatively slowed down for you. And the same way, if you theoretically have a hyper, spacecraft going at close to the speed of light, then you're technically slowing down. We'd have to run the experiment and actually do it to see if it actually would slow down biology. I have suspicion that it won't. I hope that it would. The science fiction nerd and immortalist in me hopes that it actually will slow down. So in other words, you could travel like 10,000 light years, and wake up and basically be like the same age, but you're, 10,000 years in the future and in a different 10,000 years further away in the universe. But I just want people to understand, like, this is very generally accepted physics, and it's legitimate, and it's not understood or appreciated by a general audience.
Yeah, just to add to what Brent was saying, another thought experiment with the relativity that's not really appreciated is the telescope. Imagine you had a telescope that could see 20 billion light years in one direction, and you see an alien on his bicycle. And if you walk back, perhaps like just 15 steps, you can see an entire century unfold for that world you're watching, and you'd see it unfold in fast motion. Of course, we don't have telescopes that have that high resolution, but that's just sort of relativity demonstrates the absurdity that we call our perception of time. That it's not our intuitions don't match up to what actually occurs in reality. And I think perhaps not by reversing the heat death or something. Perhaps there's something we can do to sort of correct this burden, this anomaly evolution gifted us with, that we can't properly understand time. I think that's just something to look into. What were you going to say, Rowan?
We really do need to battle against those people. I mean, this is one of the most common deathist things, is the whole heat death of the universe. They use it as extreme deathism, because they're basically saying, no, there's a finite, you're not going to live forever, there's the heat death is coming, people. It's like, this is insane. And then you got scientist people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye and every other scientist under the sun. They're all just saying, well, the heat death is coming. Like, this is ridiculous. Why can't we solve the heat death? Like, it's a technological problem. We can solve it.
So, my whole thing, and I've also been busy because I needed to finish up my Immortalist magazine article that will be coming out soon. And, my whole thing in that article that I talk about, and if you follow me on YouTube, I talk about this stuff as well, too. I'm kind of in the middle from what you just described there. I'm like, hey, I want to live as long and healthy as possible. I want to understand how this works, teach others, learn from others, build a community, a global community with this, so we can help this happen faster, bring on longevity, escape velocity faster. But at the same time, I am a person of science, and I listen to these physicists who talk about this. So I think it's most productive to focus on curing human aging right now. And then if we get to the point where we are living hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions or billions of years, I think we'll have plenty of time to worry about the heat death of the universe or how to transfer to a multiverse at a future time. So in other words, it's not very productive to focus much time or energy or theoretical or philosophical debate on this. Let's cure.
Although I do have a counter argument to this. Okay, because there are people, and I am very sympathetic to this argument, that if you cannot live literally forever, life is meaningless. Like, you end up becoming a nihilist if you think you're eventually going to die, regardless of how much time you live. Let's say you even live 1 billion years. There are people, and I tend to really sympathetic to this. Like, if you die, even if after 1 billion years, it's all pointless. So
I know,
by them saying, okay, well, you're gonna die, and the heat death is coming, it'll make people into nihilists, and they won't even want to fight for life extension because they think, well, what's the point of extending my life? I'm gonna die from the heat death anyway. So we need to tell people, no, heat death, even that if that were to occur in the future, we can solve it. Why are they so? They're these scientists. They're not being very scientific because they're literally pretending to know the future. We can't let them get away with that. Like Sam Harris, he says we need to make it embarrassing, for people to pretend to know things that they cannot know. That's what these scientists are doing. It's as embarrassing as the religious people who pretend to know that there's a heaven, and they pretend to know there's an afterlife, and they pretend to know there's a God, and they pretend to know everything. It should be just as embarrassing for these scientists to pretend to know the future, like they're the fortune tellers of the humanity.
So I'll let Brent go ahead, but I do want to jump in on this. I have some really interesting things to say about this. Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, I'll be pretty short and concise, Alex. So first of all, the future is uncertain. Coronavirus is teaching us that right now. Being an investor in general will teach you that every single day. The future and reality continues to surprise me every single day, which is one of the things that I love most about reality. And that seems to be baked into the way reality works, which is cool with me. So yeah, totally. Goes back to what I said earlier on this live stream, or what I say in general. Be humble. Don't be careful with your language and what you say. Don't be a jerk. Don't predict that you know everything or sound like you do, because that just turns people off, and people are getting smarter. And then the other thing I'd say about this whole notion of, if I live 1 billion years and then die, then my whole life was meaningless. First of all, you as an individual are the only one that creates meaning in your life. This whole question of why are we here? Where do we come from? We don't know either of those two things. And you determine why you're here. You get to choose your life and what you do. So you give meaning to your life. And so if you tell yourself the story in your own head that if I live 1 billion years and then die, then it's meaningless, then great. That's your story. That's your truth. But personally, for me, if you ask me right now, the way things are going in life extension science, if I could live 1 billion years and die, I would say I take that any day. And I've heard many other people I've interviewed say, nope, I don't want it. I want all or nothing. I'm like, dude, take it. Good for you. You can take all or nothing. I'll take 1 billion years. And I could be really, really happy with that based off all the information that I know right now. And I would be incredibly grateful for those 1 billion years. And if my other immortalists who didn't take that and live on, I would gladly, say goodbye to them at 1 billion years as they lived on with that.
I would definitely take the 1 billion years just for the sake of, having fun and burning out, whatever, But
1 billion's a lot better
obviously
than
it's
78, which is what I got right now on average. Yeah. Maybe with my healthy lifestyle, I can expect to live 100 based off everything I know right now. But
right. So I guess when I say it's meaningless, obviously it's meaningful while we're alive. Every day is meaningful while we're alive, but the point is that once you die, the meaning stops. So it's
it stops for you for sure.
It stops. Yeah, it stops for us.
And that's a valid.
So from a very self-interested perspective, it's not the days you were living that were meaningless, but it's overall, the meaning stops. So it kind of just sucks. It really sucks. I don't want the meaning to stop.
So Alex wanted to chime in here. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah. So there's I don't know if you guys ever heard of Bernard Williams, but in academia, he's super popular. He's a really influential philosopher, and he works with sort of the concept of identity. And he had some things to say about immortality. And I'll let Rowan give the response to his argument, because he's literally a deathist. He literally argues for death being necessary for us to feel any kind of meaning in life. So but he doesn't do it in a stupid way. He's very articulate in his speech. So essentially, his paper, it has this concept of categorical desires. So a categorical desire, it's like that which gives us reason to stay alive. So, like Rowan, why would you want to live forever? Let's say you want to make music, right? That was one of the reasons you said. Find eternal love. Find a girlfriend. That's another reason. You want to like go on vacation to Mars or something. Let's say another reason. What Bernard Williams says is these are all categorical desires, and what he means by that is they are all exhaustible, literally all of them. And one way you can do that is by satisfying that desire. You've exhausted the desire, or by you losing interest in the desire. You've sort of destroyed the categorical desire. And essentially, if you're like immortal, Williams says like without like sort of without this idea of like death, you'd have nothing to sort of. If you were given enough time, like all things you look forward to in life will eventually lose their appeal. So he's very nihilistic in his like attack on immortality and his defense on death.
He's retarded.
And he's saying it makes it what it's this is you've probably heard of this argument before. It's called the boredom argument. I made a video called Immortalism versus Deathism, but the way it's the dumbest argument against immortalism, but the way Bernard Williams defends it, it's genius. Like you have to read that paper. But I was just wondering like how you'd sort of respond to that for our audience.
Okay, it's funny because it's exactly the exact opposite. What makes life meaningless is the idea that it ends. I mean, if that's the case, I mean, to me, I say a temporary life is meaningless. It's something I've said a lot. I've made a video about it, but like it's the idea that you lose it all that makes it meaningless. Like it's just like a gamble. It's like gambling, right? You gamble, and it's about what you take away. If you gamble with a bunch and you end up leaving with nothing, it's like it didn't matter. I don't know. It's just a weird analogy, but like a lot of people agree with me. Like I've listened to like interviews with Billie Eilish, and she literally says that like because she thinks in her perspective that she's going to die and cease to exist, and death is inevitable in her equation or whatever her perception. She says, "Well, then everything I do is meaningless. It's just there's no point to it. There's just no point because you lose it all." And whatever, it's just like, I don't know.
Well, Rowan, do you remember what you and I chatted about right before we played dodgeball on Sunday? About the deathist stuff?
The what stuff?
Deathists first, like, life extensionists or immortalists or whatever you want to call it. So in any event, what we were talking about there is that I really don't even like talking about this stuff because I view it as basically a waste of time. And talking about
it's very mental masturbation-ish, but
it's a total distraction.
For me, it's actually not even that because masturbation, like you come at the end and it feels good, and like for me, it's just ignoramus essentially. So if you listen to the things that I say here, they just squash all that deathist stuff and all the things we talked about meaning. So first of all, you are the only one that gives meaning to your life. Like that's just a fact. This isn't just me waxing poetically. If you think about it, it's undisputable. Other people can have their own meaning for your life and what you're doing, but you are the only one that has meaning for your life. That's what you get to choose. And so the whole thing of like, Billie Eilish saying, "Oh, well, if I die, then my life had no meaning." Great. That's her perception of reality. And if she wants to believe that, then that's her truth. That's the story she's telling herself in her head. Just because Billie Eilish makes really good music and has a Grammy doesn't mean that she's actually thought this through and is smart about this, and doesn't mean that you should believe things that come out of her mouth just because she has other good talents. So regarding that, there's that. And Einstein was a genius in so many ways that people don't realize. I mean, I read Walter Isaacson's book on Steve Jobs and also Albert Einstein on top of so many other things I've studied about the guy. And Albert Einstein had a quote, something along the lines of, the most important decision you'll ever make as a human being is whether the universe is essentially an amazing place or a horrible place, because you can find ample evidence for both throughout all of reality, not just in humans, but all of history. I mean, there's been 5 established scientific natural disasters that killed off almost all species, 5 times in the Earth's 4.5 billion year history. And so that sounds horrible, but each time, you know, the evolutionary biologists tell us, and the geographer, you know, the every single scientist that's studied reality, they tell us that this is actually what spurred evolution more into bringing, you know, us. So there's good and there's bad, and it's hard to interpret like super complex and philosophical data about this, you know, stuff, but I just choose to like enjoy my life every single day because it's non-productive not to. You can just, if you don't choose to enjoy life and be like somewhat optimistic, you're just basically sabotaging yourself. And who wants to live life like that? Like yesterday, I lost a lot of money in cryptocurrency and in Tesla, and it didn't feel good. I was kind of down in the dumps yesterday morning. A few other weird things happened, but it was like my negative energy that allowed those other like bad
Brent,
things.
if
I had to get out of that, is my point. You have to get into a positive mindset, or you're just going to be sabotaging yourself. So
100%.
It makes you feel any better. There's a saying I like about the only way you get hurt on a roller coaster is if you jump off. So I'm just saying, hopefully those are words of comfort.
100%. Yeah, I've never heard that quote, but that's pretty much true. I mean, some people have gotten hurt on roller coasters from malfunctions, but your general point is well understood and agreed with. Yeah.
Anyway, so these are both very interesting.
Wait. Before we go on, I have so I can think of like one potential benefit of this mental masturbation, because I guess for some people, well, I think for me, it's a motivation really, because if I can view life as though like I need to live forever in order for my life to have meaning, the worst thing, none of us want to have a meaningless life, right? We want our life to have meaning. So if I can tell myself and really believe it, that I need to live forever in order to have meaning, think about how much extra motivation I have, because no human being wants to have a meaningless existence. Like, that's the worst, right? We all want to feel like we have a meaningful life. So I think that what it's doing for me is like, it's like a philosophical motivation. Like, because I think that's what it drove my whole pursuit of eternal life and whole creating the Eternal Life fan club thing, is because I'm like, I have to do this or everything is meaningless. So it's like everything is riding on that. So I think maybe some people need that extra boost or whatever. I don't know.
Rowan, I really like that quote. I really like the quote, you know, life is not about the amount of breaths you take, but the amount of times your breath is taken away. You know, in other words, it's not necessarily about how long you live, but what quality of life you've had. And from interviewing a lot of really smart longevity thought leaders in the past year or so, you know, a lot of them I've been somewhat surprised and humbled that they're not necessarily trying to extend life. They're actually trying to extend health span, to give better quality years to people they have. But they also know the science that if they do that, the natural outcome of that is extending their lifespan as well. And so, like, for me, I'm way more in that camp. The more I've kind of understand the philosophies and the actual science of these things, you know, let's just do the best we can to extend our health span, and everything else will just play itself out. You know, tomorrow's not promised, and don't focus so much on like super hard to get goals. Like in sales, we have goals and then we have stretch goals, and you can even have super stretch goals, which yours would be like living forever. But like, don't get so. Universe. You're right. Death of the universe. It's like those things are cool to think about, but it shouldn't consume that much of your thought process and your time and energy, or else you're being non-productive to that goal. You know, we should be focusing on like what we can be doing right now, you know, to live longer and healthier, and get other people to do that and learn about it as well, is what I think we should be focusing on.
To be honest, it has caused me like to put such a hard goal and say that is necessary for me to have meaning, like living forever. I need to live forever or my life is meaningless. That has really caused me a lot of stress. You know, that has caused, because that is very stressful. So
But you don't have. What the thing that I say is audit your thoughts every single day. Like that's my form of meditation. I take at least 10 minutes every single day to audit the thoughts going in my head because I realize it's just a program. They're beliefs or ideas that I picked up at some point in my life, then they permeate into my brain. And the more you believe something that's not true, the more it can just spread out that neural network in your brain and take over more and more of your identity. So audit your own thoughts. Think about why you believe them, if they're productive, if they're helpful to you, or if you need to squash that shit and like reverse it back and get. That's how you get smarter. And for me, I just don't think it's productive for us to be spending much of our time talking about all these like super far out philosophical things when like there is really, really important work that needs to be done to just get us to live longer right now.
So I think those are both really, really great responses to Bernard Williams. Like Rowan's response of like meaningfulness is decided by you, and Brent's response of like we should focus on practical goals first, and Bernard Williams is just mentally masturbating. If I could play like devil's advocate, I'd say while it is the mental masturbation argument is pretty good, like from my standpoint, the thing is in actual academic discussions, these people seem to have like a lot of influence, and I hate that. I hate how they have so much influence. Like we're actually studying Bernard Williams in my philosophy class, and we're studying his evil scientist experiment where he switches the brains and whatnot. And we're also studying like immortalism and deathism, and this was one of the arguments that came up. And while it might be masturbation to us, mental masturbation to us, to a lot of these like high up academic people, this guy's work actually is doing damage like spiritually to our movement. So I think perhaps maybe there might be some utility in discussing these far-out philosophical theories, but as long as it doesn't take up a significant amount of time, most of it should be technological pragmatism. That's what I do on my channel. It's like 90% technology and like maybe 10% philosophy. But yeah, I think these are both great responses to Bernard Williams. And if you're still not convinced by the responses these two gave, let's just revisit the fact that he's saying the whole reason life is meaningful is because it's finite. The things we do are finite. The whole reason life feels meaningful is because categorical desires are extinguishable, or you lose interest in them. But what I would say is that there are some here's my rebuttal to it. Some categorical desires aren't extinguishable. For example, like my meaning of life or whatever is to sort of just pursue knowledge, and that's inexhaustible. You can never know anything in the universe. There's some really great philosophical proofs for this idea that you can't possibly know everything there is to know, and that's an endless goal. So to live an immortal life, perhaps you need immortal goals, and that's why Bernard Williams might be wrong. Another thing is, Rowan, you could recycle categorical desires. So that's another reason. Like for example, let's say Rowan wants to go to Mars. He goes to Mars. He exhausts the categorical desire, and then maybe a billion years later, he forgot what it was like to be on Mars, and then he does it again. And you can do that infinitely. Like I said, immortal desires for immortal lives. And just to last thought on Bernard Williams, boredom actually isn't that bad. Some people can find like meaningfulness in boredom. I mean, like if you have like if you were a director of like a very effective malaria eradication program, but if you found like it's ultimately tedious, you could still. This is the whole myth of Sisyphus, like rolling the boulder up the hill. There's this guy called Albert Camus, and he said you could find meaning even in these boring, arduous tasks. It's the meaning is up to you to construct. That's kind of like what Brent was saying earlier. I think that's a good argument. So I don't want to stay on the philosophical side of immortalism. We could get to a different topic now. You guys want to go to the chat?
I think I was highly influenced by to be honest, I think my mindset about death making life meaningless was influenced by my Christian upbringing, because there's verses in the Bible where this guy is like saying saying everything is meaningless, like da 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 da, and he's talking about death and stuff. I forgot the Bible verse, but I swear I think it comes from that. And then I started like people like Woody Allen. He actually puts this in his movies. I'm not joking. He puts this philosophy in his movies. He's like a character in his movie, and he's talking about death, and he's like trying to like find a religion to make his life meaningful, because he thinks, he says this, he's like having a debate with his parents in the movie, and he's like, everything's meaningless, and he's like walking around the house, and he's like, don't you care that you're gonna die? Like, what's the point of this? What's the point of anything, you know? And he puts that kind of thing in his movies.
What is the Woody Allen quote? It's something along the lines of, I
don't want to live
don't want
forever."
to become immortal through my work. I don't want to live forever through my work. I want to live forever in my
In
apartment.
my apartment. Yeah.
Yes.
And I love that. And, but here's Woody Allen getting so upset about like meaning and this and that. Like, you're alive right now, so you get to choose what the meaning is. And I just choose that I'm alive and I'm happy and I want to keep doing this. So let's put our heads together and figure out how we can use this stuff called science to live longer and healthier. So it all just keeps coming back to me for that. And any like discussion that moves away from that is just, to me, non-productive. So there's some really good quotes about this stuff that can get people to think differently. And one thing it's fresh in my mind because I just had to run through and re-edit my Mortalist magazine article before it comes out, because it's coming out soon. Like, one thing that I talk about in that article as well too is that, and I got this from Ray Kurzweil and I've kind of expanded upon it, guys, the ability to unlearn things that are no longer true and then relearn new information that is true is a very, very important skill set. And I just sold e-learning, for about 3 years, was my last job that I quit 2 years ago. And so I actually know a lot of data and science and things about like where this industry is and where it's going, how important this is for corporations to like retrain employees and things like that. This is a super important skill set for people. So auditing your own thoughts every day and your own beliefs is like really, really important. It's going to become exponentially important if we do start living way longer. Because think about people right now who are old. They're not just old biologically. Their whole brain and their thought process and the time, it's all old. The science of music shows that the reason people who are in their 70s love music from 60 years ago is because that's the music they were growing up when their brain was developing, and that's what they're stuck into that pattern. So my general takeaway that I want people to understand is that you need to learn how to unlearn and relearn things, because even if something was true, let's call it 5 years ago, 30 years ago, however long ago, even if it was true then, it might not be true now. So even something that served you, a belief system, an idea, a behavior, whatever, even something that was serving you in the past, it just might not serve you even anymore, even if it might still be true. So we need to just be continuously adapting, evolving, creative creatures who are continuing to think about what's best for us moving forward is my general thought process that I want people to think about more.
That's a good thought process. You sort of see it that you sort of see that echoed in Friedrich Nietzsche, spiritual founder of transhumanism, and he had this idea called the will to power. That's self-making. It doesn't mean what the Nazis meant. The Nazis misinterpreted it because the word Willem zur Kraft or Willem zur Macht can either mean self-making or self-power, overpowering, dominating, and that's what the Nazis translated it as. But what Nietzsche meant was you sort of create your own meaning, as in meaning is subjective. And if you change yourself, you can change your meaning. You can create your own ethics, so to speak. And that's sort of where transhumanism evolved out of that. When you start modifying your own hardware, this idea of meaning will be something you construct. You don't have to go to people like Bernard Williams, who says all your your life death is good because all your categorical desires are finite. So just as a closing thought, whenever somebody uses the Bernard Williams argument saying life is meaningful because you have finite desires, remind them that you have recyclable desires. You also have inexhaustible desires, immortal desires, and you can also find the idea of boredom itself meaningful to you if you construct yourself that way. So I think that's a good note to segue on.
Hey, guys, before we go on, just a little bit more mental masturbation because it's fun. So I found that verse of the Bible that I was talking about. Okay, let me read this for you. It's really interesting. It just shows that I didn't come up with this, and people have been thinking this way a long freaking time now. Listen to this, and I want you guys to think if you guys have any sympathies to this type of thinking of this person in the Bible. This is from Ecclesiastes 1, okay? He said, this is some person talking, I don't know who this is, but, the words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem, whatever. He says, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south, turns to the north, round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing.
Is there a Jordan Peterson video on this?
It's almost done. It's almost done. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? Wait, he's not even talking about death. Wait, this is not the wait. Oh wait.
No. That sounds like word for word Bernard Williams' argument. There's never like the idea that you can, or the rebuttal to his argument that you can come back to something new. Is that what it's saying? Who's saying this? Is this a?
Wait a sec. This must not be the one because he's not talking about death. I don't know.
We'll look it up later. But I bet Jordan has a video on it because he does.
I thought that he was going to be talking about death. That death makes everything meaningless. Maybe I'm wrong. But this is the quote by Woody Allen. Now, check this out. This wasn't even in the character. This is him actually. This is in an interview. He actually said this. Okay. He said every 100 years, someone presses a button, and a big toilet flushes, and everybody on the Earth changes. Everybody on the planet is gone, and a new set comes in. Every 100 years, it's like the whole planet gets washed clean. So it just seems like a big meaningless thing. So he's saying that death makes life meaningless. That I vibe with that. Something in my brain vibes with that idea. It just seems so truthful.
That's categorically not true, and I can actually prove it. So what he's implying there is that there's like a reset, and then there's like a whole new group of people in here who didn't learn anything or weren't connected to the other people, is what I took away from him, implying that being meaningless. Whereas what's actually happening is, yes, it's true that, every approximately 100 years or so, 122 and 164 days, if he was Jean Clement, the oldest living person ever documented by, like actual government documentation, birth certificate in France, is basically that we are connected. Like, I'm raising my son right now. So even if I die, I'm still passing along knowledge and information to him and so on and so forth. So it's more of this continuous process than it is just like, whoop. And I think it's like somewhat narcissistic of Woody Allen to think that. And I sympathize with his narcissism because he just selfishly wants to live longer like I do. And I think like most humans do, healthy humans, they should want to live longer and healthier. But I just think it's not necessarily like a healthy perspective to look at it like that, personally. I think that we are right now the human civilization, the evolution of our ancestors, and I think that in some ways we get better, in some ways we get worse. There's that saying that sometimes you have to take a couple steps backwards to go forwards, and I think that happens throughout human civilization many times. But for the most part, we're moving forwards, and we're not moving forward just out of like random chance. We're moving forward off the things that we've learned from our ancestors in history. So I think that kind of perspective is lost in Woody Allen's quote there.
So are you saying like you take some kind of meaning, even if it's not personal meaning, you take some kind of I don't know. You like the idea
really
that
simple,
even if you're not, you like the idea that even if you're not in the future, I mean, obviously you prefer to be in the future, but even like, let's say you don't make it, you like the idea that humanity just keeps on going and progressing somehow.
It's not that I like the idea. It's that is how reality actually works. And I try to focus on how reality works rather than how I want it to work or perceive that it works, like Woody Allen is doing, in my opinion. It's a fact that I knew my grandparents, and they taught me things. It's also a fact that all four of them are dead now. And so they did have meaning to me, and I'm still alive, and their meaning is still meaningful to me, even though they're dead. And with him talking about like the toilet flushing and like they're gone, he's insinuating that, in my opinion, that they're just gone and it's meaningless. Where it's like, well, to them, they're dead and they're gone, but they still passed on knowledge and information to me, is all I'm saying. And I think it's pretty factual what I'm saying.
Shit, this is fascinating. Have you guys ever heard of eternal recurrence? it relates to this whole toilet flushing. Have you guys ever heard the term eternal recurrence?
Is that like reincarnation?
No, so eternal recurrence, this also comes from Nietzsche, by the way. Crazy coincidence. So he had this idea that, like his metaphysics, when the universe plays out, he believed it would play out over and over in the same way because he was kind of a determinist in that sense.
I think you talked about this in one of your Transhumania YouTube videos.
Yeah, so
right?
it's the idea of like this is in physics. There's a theory called the Big Crunch that instead of ripping apart, like we don't know which is true yet. We'll have to wait and see. But instead of the universe ripping apart, it collapses back in on itself. And because it's deterministic, when it expands out again, it'll be the same way it was before. So it'll expand and contract and expand and contract. And none of those expansions, none of those universes will be different. You will live the same life over and over. And Nietzsche makes an argument like he says, look at this. Life is so absurd, right? Nothing you do really matters because the same thing just plays out over and over. And he says, even in that sense, you should find meaning in this eternal recurrence. Even then, you should embrace it. He was a very life-affirming philosopher, as opposed to like Schopenhauer, who is like he glorified death and antinatalism. I think that's just really interesting.
The idea of eternal
is there
like it's basically like the idea that eventually the atoms that form up my brain and the exact same pattern will reform again in the future, right? There'll be another me. Like, even if I die, there'll be another Rowan in the future. Is this right?
Oh, yeah, that's like one view of history, and it's also the Buddhists. The Buddhists also believe, the Mahayana Buddhists also believe in this like a cycle of life. They don't believe history has progress, like the toilet is flushed, but the experiences go on to live. So this is like Hegel, the philosopher Hegel, he believes in progress. But Nietzsche and the Buddhists, they think it's all cyclical. So which do you think would be more meaningful, a cyclical life or a life with progress, where even if you die, your what Hegel calls the Weltgeist, the world spirit, the animating principle of nature, responsible for all human progress, lives on through your work. It goes back to the Woody Allen quote. Would you guys think it could be possible to find meaning in a Hegelian universe or in a Nietzschean universe?
I think both are equally meaningless, because in the cyclical one, if you die and then you get recreated and do the exact same thing and recreate it, and it's just this never-ending pattern, you're dying, and each new you that gets reformed in the future is not you. It's a new person. It doesn't matter if they looked and talked like you. If it's a new person that gets formed from different materials and it's a different person, it's not you. That's meaningless. And then the second one is you die. It's meaningless.
Well, for me, I take more the opposite side of that. I think any reality that you're experiencing has meaning to me personally, you know? So, for example, if I'm in a virtual reality and I'm playing around in there, like, that has meaning to me, and that's fun. And if I keep getting reincarnated or whatever you want to call it, in multiverses, wormholes, whatever, if I'm getting to experience some form of reality, then to me, then it's good, you know? So I don't get too caught up in like this has no meaning. I'm not like, I'm not picky about those kind of things.
Well,
did you never have that phase?
But if I get to experience the reality, then yeah. If it's me, if I actually get to experience something, then it's not meaningless. But I was just saying, like, Rowan, if I don't, like, let's say my consciousness ceases to exist forever.
Rowan, last week when we were driving to Dodgeball, remember we had that conversation in the car where we were talking about, you know, different chronics people all worried about, like, at the crux of the chronics, what these people really want is they want to keep their consciousness going. That's what we all really want. But that's why I wanted to point out to Max Moore, it's like, dude, do you realize that your consciousness is not just like from the neck up? Like, this is factual, you know? I talked about with the neurons in the heart, and you know, you can look at other things like the microbiome and the vagus nerve and other sorts of things. These clearly creates your consciousness. It's at least part of it. And so, you know, that's what a lot of these chronics people, you know, want. It's what I want. I want my consciousness to keep going. So my whole thing is I don't really care like about a lot of the other minute details. I just want to keep living this experience. And I'm different right now than I was when I was like 4, or before I was even like had my, you know, hippocampus developed where I could form memories, you know, but I was alive when I was 1, but I don't remember that. But that was still kind of me, but it kind of wasn't. So what I really want is to just keep this going, you know, me living and being healthy. I don't necessarily want to experience reality if I have a horrible disease, or I want, you know, what transhumanism to me is about is not just extending life, not just radical life extension, but radical health extension, radical happiness, the radical improvement of all forms of reality is what I'm personally like working on and what we should all be focused
I would
on.
totally agree with that. I actually have a video about like the meaning of life, and I argue in it that perhaps the meaning of life, even though you are responsible for creating it, all of it falls under this category of I just want to keep replicating myself. Because if you go back to like a bacterium and Brent, the bacteria has the same core meaning of life as Brent, and the meaning of life is sort of persistence. Like if you go back to the dawn of life, what life literally started as it was a piece of DNA and then a polymerase enzyme that made more pieces of DNA. It's like a feedback loop. So that literally this chemical unit has the same meaning of life that I do, and I find that really fascinating. Like the meaning of life is just to keep persisting, and we all find different avenues for channeling that. No matter how absurd life might seem, we still find meaning in that, and I think it's because of what we are, because we are these self-replicating nanites that have formed these gushy meat bags. We, in that sense, are no different from just a self-replicating DNA molecule and a polymerase enzyme recursively bootstrapping throughout the cosmos. I think it all fundamentally comes back to this idea of wanting to live on, and that's why I'm a life extensionist to some degree.
Yeah, beautifully said, Alex.
All right, one more quote I got to share with you guys, and you've all heard this quote. You've all heard it.
Rowan, real quick before you do the quote, I just have a quick question. Are we gonna go back to like talking about the coronavirus? Because
we will.
Sure. Yeah, okay. We should give people practical information, like actually like more immune system stuff, like just a basic immune system protocol. We didn't give them really any practical information. But yeah, anything we want to talk about the coronavirus, absolutely. So anyways, I gotta give Shakespeare some props. Now, the quote is, "Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing." Now, of course, I have to preface this with, like, he's totally wrong, because, like, no, it's not. It doesn't signify nothing, because we can live forever, like, hello. So he didn't get that part. He didn't get the eternal life part, that the hope of an eternal life. But I feel like he got the darkness of reality. Like, if we have to die, I would agree that life signifies nothing. So I think I think me and him are on the same page, except for I don't think he didn't get the eternal life thing. He didn't have hope, and he didn't see the possibility of living forever. And if he had seen the possibility of living forever, he'd probably, put an asterisk and a part 2 to this. But guess what? We can live forever. Like, no, our life doesn't have to signify nothing. So I feel like he got half of it.
Just to sort of like inject some nuance here, this is from a play called Macbeth, and I think just to put it into context, I don't think Macbeth was being a nihilist. To put it into context, this is at the very end of the play where Macbeth has turned the entire nation of Scotland against him. All the lords want to fucking kill him because they found out he murdered another lord, and then he hears that his wife has committed suicide. Like, he's heard that his life was destroyed, and he's like, "Oh my god, like all this was for nothing. Like all this, my whole life, that everything I've worked for was for nothing." I don't think he was advocating nihilism per se, but that is an interesting quote about like the human condition when confronted with the absurdity of life. And I think we all have that stage in our teenage years. We were running around telling people life is meaningless. I was certainly like that. I was like an atheist nihilist, and then I sort of rediscovered Christianity through life extension, which is like it's not necessarily Christianity as it is. It's sort of a mutation of it, where you still have the Christian ethic, and you channel that into a new avenue of progress.
I think if I didn't have the hope of eternal life, if I didn't see this as a possibility in my future that I could live forever, I think I'd absolutely be a nihilist. I would be totally on that page. The only thing that's preventing me from being a nihilist is like, hey, I can live forever. So, anyways, yeah, we can talk about whatever.
Oh yeah, so coronavirus. So there's some people in the comments. Lesser Logic, I think he was looking for a coronavirus video, and he stumbled into our mental masturbation about the
we talked about coronavirus for like the first hour, and we did.
We promised this was a coronavirus stream at some point in this video.
Hey, I'm just gonna check if my housemates are being kept up by me. You guys keep on talking. I'll be right back.
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
So, do you want to steer the topic back to coronavirus?
Yeah, we can do that for sure. Did you watch the Joe Rogan interview with Michael from? So what was your?
I don't
First
like.
of all,
I
before
like
you,
it, but I don't like the panic that's ensuing from. Oh, were you gonna say?
what up, Bobby?
Bro, I just sent the sexiest email. Oh my god, dude.
Who were you emailing?
Dude, I'll tell you very soon. It was
Yeah,
such a good one. It was such a good one. It was a good one. Okay. It was probably what? Hey Max, how much was that? Like $1 billion email? I don't think
It
Max knows.
was $1 billion email.
Yeah. It was a solid billion. And we're not even fucking joking, dude. Like
So anyway, Brent was about to talk about that Joe Rogan episode with the coronavirus. What were you gonna say?
dude. Yeah.
I was just Bobby. Have you seen it?
Yeah. A little bit. I
So
saw
what
like
were your
half.
all's what were your all's like main takeaways from it? I think Alex,
I wish he would have been on 3 days later because everything hit the fan for the last 3 days.
yeah, that's a good
So
point.
he was just a little bit too soon. But I mean, dude, I'm glad though because I got my fucking mask and I started wiping everything down that I touched.
But
So,
you heard what he said about the mask, though, right?
he said so the masks are good because he said respiratory is the main way of infection. So he's like, masks are generally okay. Just, the gloves and shit, he said it's kind of overkill. But at the same time, there's a lot not known. So
I believe, from what I recall, he said that the masks are basically worthless. That's what he said in the interview. He said that the medical masks that people are wearing were actually made. They were designed for surgeons to prevent the surgeons dropping their bodily fluids onto the people while they're doing surgery. And I think he also said that those masks were all made at one location in Puerto Rico. And he even wrote in his book in 2017, hey guys, maybe we should diversify where we make masks for the global market, because if Puerto Rico gets hit by a tornado, then we're going to be in a huge global shortage of these medical masks. And then sure enough, in 2017, there actually was the huge tornado that came through and ravaged the island and the country of Puerto Rico. So that's what I recall him saying. So basically it's worthless to wear the mask is what he said.
If I could just defend the mask. So this isn't the coronavirus mask. This is what I'm wearing right now is I'm triple masking BSL-2 masks. So while it won't stop the coronavirus, I totally agree with that. There is sort of an asymptotic filtration effect whereby the more BSL-2 masks you have on, it does sort of decrease the chance of the particles getting through. So I would say don't think the mask is going to make you immune, but at the same time do something to minimize your chances. So just the minimization of particulates touching your mouth is doing something. It's not a guarantee of safety, but it will have an effect nonetheless.
All right, you guys. So yeah, my housemates want to kind of sleep, so I'm too loud. So let's give our closing thoughts. Maybe we should end on something like some practical information on what's your immune system? What are you doing to really boost your immune system, so that if you were to ever get the coronavirus, you think you'd survive it because your immune system is so strong. So my advice, actually, I just heard pignaginol actually stops the coronavirus, it actually kills it. So pignaginol is something from pine needles. You can actually just make a pine needle tea. That's everywhere. So if that's true, that's awesome. That's good to know. Pignaginol is a supplement. Also, you can supplement.
dude, how dope is Rowan's red light?
Pretty dope. Yeah. I'd say my final closing advice, the coronavirus.
Wait, I'm not done.
Okay, go ahead.
Pignaginol, so NAC, please, everyone, get NAC. It is so cheap. I have to hype this supplement. It is so cheap and so effective. It is the best thing ever for your immune system. Really, it could save your life, especially if you take it in high doses a few times a day. It's phenomenal. for like preventing colds, flus, fighting off illnesses. It boosts your glutathione levels. That's like the body's master antioxidant. I can't say it enough. Get some freaking NAC. It's a cheap supplement. Get it right now. Most people don't know that this like literally will save your life. Colloidal silver. Just get a freaking colloidal silver generator. It's just not hard. Get some colloidal silver bars. It's safe. People have been drinking colloidal silver forever. I grew up drinking it. It's not a big deal. It's safe. It's awesome. And then I would say there's a bunch of things. I think methylene blue. This stuff is also super cheap. And it's just a dye. They use this thing to kill malaria. It increases the oxygenation, so it'll oxidize those viruses. It'll people say ozone. I'm lucky enough to have an ozone generator, so ozone will kill viruses if you get it. But sleep. Brent's the master of sleep. Watch Brent's videos on sleep. I think sleep is super important. So
I was just gonna say, my one big piece of advice for the coronavirus. It's so simple. You guys probably guessed it already. Is sleep, because just common sense. The more you sort of stay up at night, the less energy your body is going to have to divert to your immune system, so that in case you did get something, there's less energy to fight it. For this, I know some people love to like go to sleep at 2 or whatever, or stay up all night and then show up at work like and chug a coffee. But if at any time in your life, if just for this one moment, make sure you get enough sleep. You can fuck around for the rest of your life, but just these next 3 months, maybe, just maybe, adopt this habit and see if you can do it, because this would be probably the best time in your entire life to adopt this habit.
Heck yeah.
Bobby, final recommendation for coronavirus?
Wait, we're getting offline?
Yeah.
Come on, dude. I just got here. I just got the phone. All right, dude. Final fucking yeah, dude. We're all gonna die. Okay, that's not cool.
That's not a life extensionist recommendation.
Okay, if you die, make sure you lay down in the snow. Where it's get preserved. I swear to God. Rowan and I want to make we want to start a snow cemetery, and I've actually talked to a few different investors, and dude, they're like totally for it. They're like, yeah, dude, democratize and demonetize, a different type of biostasis, which would be in the snow. So we should all talk about that more sometime. And then go lay down in the snow if you die, and then.
I actually looked up like the cryonics alternatives page on H+, and Arctic burials was like listed there. Like that's like an alternative people are seriously considering.
Oh shit!
I think it's better than cryonic. Absolutely.
Dude, I need to look into that. But and this is serious, okay? Even if you hear a doctor say the coronavirus isn't that big of a deal, first off, nobody knows really. I mean, first off, it seems like a big deal. When has anybody quarantined entire cities, let alone countries? Okay, right? So that's pretty effed up. This hasn't happened in a while. It has never happened actually, right? This has never happened in all of human history. We've never been this advanced in technology, but have to quarantine at this level and have no control at this level. We've never seen this before. Okay, no, it's never happened. So it's scary shit. We don't have anything to compare it to, really, and prepare for the worst. Things could start getting like Walking Dead over here, and you got to be preventative, right? We've been trained to not be preventative our entire lives. Everyone, doctors, every person. You got to be reactive, right? Wait until you get the cancer and you're about to die, then go to the doctor. Wait until you get in a car crash and then go to the fucking wherever you go. Go get guns and stuff. Be prepared. And it's not about being fearful. It's about being strategic and intelligent. Yeah.
Good. All right, Brent. Final word of advice to the survivalists watching.
So you guys already hit on the big one, sleep, and I'll just highly recommend. I posted it in the live stream, but you can also find it. I just shared it on Facebook. Dr. Ed Park's blog about the coronavirus or COVID-19. And I'll just read his last paragraph. He said, everybody, please call. And let me first say, Dr. Ed Park is a friend. He runs an anti-aging practice in Orange County. I've known him for many years. I've read both of his books. I read pretty much all of his blogs. I've interviewed him a few times. Really smart guy. And he, in my opinion, he's like a polymath because he can talk about almost anything from cryptocurrency to all of the crazy stuff we talk about. He has a master's in public health, and he also has he's a medical doctor, one from Harvard, one from Columbia. And yeah, and so he's coming from a perspective as an actual, think about it, he has a master's in public health. So he's actually gone through training to understand what to do and advice here in this case. And so just read the article. It's like 5 minutes. He says, here's the final paragraph. He says, everybody, please calm down. This is not a new threat. The virulence is not high. It still impacts hosts with immune aging. We will likely have herd immunity, making it less severe each year, and simple measures of decreasing transmission on fomites, like your hands, will control the spread. The only epidemic I see here as a medical doctor and public health trainee is that of the Dunning-Kruger viral cofactor. The main thing I take away from this madness is that Facebook is amazing, and it has a rare transmorgified humanity into transhumanist hive consciousness. So if some of those words didn't make sense, he talked about some of those words that I emphasized. He bolded them in that paragraph. So read the article to understand more context there. And the Dunning-Kruger effect, for people who aren't familiar with that, it's that people who are generally uneducated about a topic think that they're more educated about it.
Hold on. I got a great Dunning-Kruger graph. Rowan, pull up my Twitter and scroll down, like 3 tweets down to the Dunning-Kruger effect. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then while Rowan's doing that, and then the other part of Dunning-Kruger is that people who are very highly educated about a topic falsely assume that the general population is more educated than they really are. And so I think that that's really going on a lot here as well too. So we all just need to be a little bit more humble, look at the data, interpret the data correctly, because part of interpreting data is knowing what data is relevant and what is not. So people are looking at all this data like, oh my God, this is happening. It's like, well, what is this actually doing so far? I don't pretend that I understand the future. The unknown is scary, that this thing replicates relatively quickly and has the potential to explode. But so far, it hasn't done that. And it hasn't killed that many people relative to a lot of other things that we should still be really scared of. So that's the way that
Did the other diseases kill this quickly, though? What, like H1N1?
So, like, for example, he uses the flu as an example, right? He talks about the flu in this article, and the flu has killed way more people in the last 4 months than coronavirus. COVID.
Yeah, but in the beginning of the flu, that's what I want to see. I want to see the beginning of the flu. You know, because
the flu has been around since like the beginning of time that we know of, essentially. So what do you mean by the beginning of the flu?
Never mind.
Yeah, and so for example, so one thing Michael said in this interview with Joe Rogan is that he strongly denounces the conspiracy theorists that like this was created in a lab in China. For the record, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows, but I'll take the opinion of Michael, who was on Joe Rogan, way higher as credibility.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, we don't really know. We can't really compare against the flu because we don't know we can't compare when it first began. So, we can only compare with how it's been here for so long and how, it's been so successful.
Yeah, that's fair, but that's where the the herd immunity comes in that Dr. Park talks about, which is a really important concept that's not getting popularized, in the things that I've read and heard about in the mainstream media, which for folks real briefly who don't understand what that is, like over time, if this spreads, your body builds immunity to it. So one of the best things that can happen to you, for example, if you're 20 years old and healthy, is to go ahead and get COVID now. Let's say it spreads for 40 more years so that you build up immunities. So if you do get it again when you're 60, your body has those immunities built up when you were younger to then fight it off when you're 60, when you're at a higher risk factor. So that is something that like basically nobody's talking about. So if, for example, coronavirus, COVID-19 is just a new that will always be around, and maybe we can't even create a vaccine that completely kills it. then at least you can have a strong immune system to fight it off, now, and build immunities for it for decades.
But what if you vaccinate yourself and then you have 20% less lung capacity because you just injected yourself?
And that's bad, but we don't even have a vaccine for it yet.
Yeah, and then the only thing I'm thinking about now is Alex. I'm imagining Alex sleeping in his new pajamas.
You mean his outfit he's wearing right now? Is that where you're?
Yeah. I've got tons of these BSL2 gowns. Like my work throwing them out.
Dude, give me one.
My workplace was throwing them out. So they're like, hey, who? Oh fuck yeah.
So lucky.
So everybody, on my Facebook, I posted it recently, or go to Ed Park. Please read his article and give it a quick like and comment or whatever if you like it and you have a good comment to share.
Yeah.
You get the right below.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see. I went to your Twitter. I didn't.
It's right below the it's right below the cyber goths. It's the post right below that.
Let me see if I can find it out. Hold on.
It's a really good graph. It's right below that post.
So it's one of your recent tweets?
Yeah.
March 10th?
It's like it's a neat little graph.
It's a graph?
I have to go poop.
Oh, okay. Is it realism? I oppose suicide in all its forms.
Scroll
Oh,
further.
I found it. Huh.
Yeah.
I'm showing
one
it.
more down. One more down.
Bring back
Now
biohazard
it
symbols
says-
of gas mask.
Right,
This
one
one?
below that. Right below that is the Dunning-Kruger tweet.
I'm showing
okay.
it.
Overconfidence
So it
is
says
a product.
overconfident.
Yeah.
Rowan, you go ahead.
It's got like a graph. It says like Mount Stupid and then Valley of Despair and then Slope of Enlightenment. I thought that was kind of funny. I think like Valley of Despair. Yeah, right there. So Valley of Despair. That's when you just graduate from college and you find out that this academic environment was really artificial, and you have to learn what kinds of like how to actually acquire knowledge and how to think critically. I think while you're in college, you're on top of Mount Stupid. So.
Hey, did I tell you
I
guys
think that's a good analogy. And maybe in your 30s and 40s, you start approaching the slope of
dude,
I will put everything.
I forgot to
Really broke.
I forgot to tell everyone that there's a 2015 study in Nature. Did you guys talk about that? Dude,
No.
there's a 2015 study in Nature that predicted that they said that there's a high chance of a coronavirus from bats causing a pandemic. And so they asked for funding, and they didn't get the funding. I think it might have been because of Trump.
It's a lot of the stuff that you guys hear me talk about quite a bit, and people have subscribed to my YouTube channel that I talk about. It's, I've been wanting to do some writing for quite a while, like years. And so I'm actually happy that Denora Delphin, the founder of the Immortalist magazine, came to me and asked me to write an article. And so I was like, cool. And it was, fun to do it, but it took a lot more time and energy than I was expecting to actually write. And then I'm kind of a perfectionist. So I had my wife read it, and she has a journalism degree, so she's psychoanalyzing,
nice.
editing, and then her brother read it, and Denora did her own edits. So, it's kind of like something that never would end if we didn't have like a publishing date where it just needed to go. It would just kind of keep going. So there's tons of other things I could have put in it that I left out, but I just talk about what I've kind of learned and why I'm passionate about living long. And it's a little under 3,000 words, so it shouldn't take you too long to read it. And hopefully it will get some important ideas and ideas that I think that are important out to the transhumanist community or whoever's reading this magazine. And I figured I might as well start just post it on Medium and post it on like a LinkedIn post as well too, or a LinkedIn, you can post an actual article on LinkedIn, because why not? They're free, and I should in general think that I should be writing more and putting it on, especially free platforms like LinkedIn and Medium. That
do you have a blog, like a WordPress blog or something?
I don't. Like, that's what I probably should be doing, is what I'm saying. It's something I procrastinated. I've decided to do YouTube instead. But Yeah, I should probably. Well, let's see how this one goes first. How people generally receive it, and people like it and they have questions, and I can start writing more about other stuff.
So, this is just speaking from personal experience, but I used to have a blog, and I used to write about, like, I'm a way better writer than I am a speaker. I'm a terrible speaker, but I decided to join YouTube anyway, because the moment I started my YouTube channel, I realized that, like, just one obscure video with a few hundred views, has more reach than any of the articles I wrote ever would. So I just canceled the blog and moved to YouTube. So maybe you'll be more successful. I hope you are. And
that's why I chose YouTube, because the network effects of YouTube and just how it works, and we're
bigger reach.
Yeah, but writing's a powerful medium, and people learn in different ways too. Some people learn better audio, some people learn better by reading.
Here's a visual learner. Visual learner gang, rise up.
I had a love-hate relationship with writing this article. It was fun in many ways and got me excited, and like it floodgates open and wormholes of ideas. But on the other end, it's like, man, I got to shorten this, condense it. It was challenging. It was way more time-consuming. I'm a huge perfectionist, so I had to like choose my language more carefully. So it was. I wrote a lot of papers like throughout high school and college and stuff, so it was kind of taking my brain back to that time period, which has been like over a decade from now. So
yeah, rule number 1 of college papers: a paper is never finished; it is only due.
Exactly.
You asymptotically approach completion, but will never reach it.
Yeah.
Hey Alex, what nootropics are you on right now? I just want to know.
So I'm on one that makes me kind of chill out. This one's called GABA. It's a neurotransmitter in your brain, but you gotta take like a lot of it for it to actually work. Like you've taken Phenibut, right? So Phenibut's a GABAergic. It kind of mimics the GABA, and it like really it's an anti-anxiety. So if I really want to like talk about like the mental masturbation shit, I need that to like kind of open up socially. I think this is way better than alcohol. Phenibut, GABA, ashwagandha, all these like anti-anxiolytics. I think we should create a culture where we consume those instead of alcohol, because they're so like far less harmful. Like alcohol, I think. The fact that it's legal, all the worst drugs seem to be legal, and all the best drugs seem to be illegal, which I hate. So I don't know. But I think we really need a huge reform in our drug laws, but that's for another podcast.
All right.
Amen
So any other closing thoughts? I'll definitely be reading your article, Brent. So
Same, I can't wait.
That'll be. Put everyone's links in the description. Thank you guys for coming, and we'll do another live stream soon. This was fun. I love it every time. I love talking to you guys.
So check out this. Rowan is Eternal Life Fan Club. I'm Transhumania. I'm gonna comment in the chat so you guys can see how it's spelled. Here I am.
May you all survive the year of death. I called it.
The year of death.
I said when Mr. Peanut died, I'm like, Mr. Peanut died. This is like a bad omen. Like, this is signaling like the year of death. And now, look, the coronavirus. It's like, freak. Kobe Bryant announced the coronavirus. Like, what the? The year of death, people. You heard it here. Don't die. That's it.
Yeah.
May you guys live forever. Peace out.
Death to the Reaper.